Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith. Usually I say the not so great tennis podcast, but today it's a great tennis podcast because of our guest. 197, climbing towards 200. Nomena, thank you for being on the GreatBase Tennis Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
Let's go with last names and syllables. Give us your, let's go with your maiden name first.
6 syllables?
No, just sing it.
Okay. Rasolo Malala.
One more time.
Rasolo Malala.
That's cool. When you have a name like Steve Smith, it's a pretty boring name. And then now, marriage, marital name.
Raharinosy.
I like the first one. Give us the first one more time.
Rasolo Malala.
La 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 la. With, I have an outline here of words, buzzwords, perhaps phrases. Madagascar. Well, if you're from France, you're French. You spent time there. You played tennis at the University of Texas. You're a Texan. How about Madagascar? Is it Madagascarian?
It's Malagasy.
Malagasy.
Yes.
Malagasy. It's kind of like if you're from Wisconsin. Are you a Wisconsinite? No, you're a cheesehead. But I just wrote these. These are not in chronological order. But native of Madagascar, tennis player, currently now a business person, a mom, a Longhorn. We got to get into that. Go Texas Longhorns, an NCAA team champion, student of the game of tennis. Have that down. International. Grew up, lived on 3 continents, worldly. With, we usually start with, how did you get connected to tennis? We always tease and say, what was your favorite baby food? Tell us about your beginning, your connection to tennis.
So my connection to tennis, my mom loved playing tennis. We were part of a club and I was hanging out at the tennis club all the time with my mom as a kid. And then I started taking lessons when I was 8 years old. Started training, taking lessons with a coach from Madagascar who also had 2 daughters around the same age as me. And he coached a group of 6 girls. And that's how I got started.
And what surface? Red clay?
Red clay all the way.
And being east coast of Africa, most of Africa is hard court, right?
Yes, but in Madagascar, actually, the natural ground is red clay.
Oh, okay.
So all you need is to flatten the
ground.
And so growing up, I don't think there was one single hard court.
That was true. I remember that was true. I went to prep school in New England and a lot of red clay courts. So when you travel and play tournaments in Africa, you go from clay to hard?
So I started play. When I was a kid, when I was 8, 9, 10, until I left Madagascar, I never played outside of Madagascar.
Oh, wow.
So I played.
That's right. You told me that.
I played locally. Even most of them were not official tournaments. It was tournaments organized by the parents themselves. So it was only when I left Madagascar at the age of 11 that I started playing outside of Madagascar.
Tell us a little about Madagascar. I told you I went to the computer. I like just saying Madagascar. I've been proud of the fact I'm worldly enough, my geography, that I know where it is. I'm sure you met all sorts of people. You have to tell them where Madagascar is.
Yes, Madagascar is an island off the east coast of Africa. Looks very small on the map because it's right next to Africa, but it's actually the size of Texas.
Yeah, and it's the 4th largest island.
Yes, that's correct.
And it's, I think, number 4 as far as poorest countries.
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah, it is a developing country, lots of poverty.
And it was a country that was unsettled for the longest time. There was no inhabitants. There was no people.
No. It's so there was actually 2 different people groups that inhabited the island. One people group came from Southeast Asia. So they were sailors that came from Southeast Asia. And they settled in the center of the island. And then there were Arab nomads that crossed the African continent, mixed with Africans, and then settled on the coast of the island. So there's kind of 2 distinct people groups.
And there's distinct Wildlife.
Yes, yes, yes.
Do you remember what I told your daughter to say? She's here visiting us at Wintergreen. 11-year-old daughter plays tennis. Um, you've come with your whole family before, your son and your husband. With what do you remember what I told your daughter to tell people? What did I teach her? Remember that?
Made this trip.
What did I teach? I told your daughter, I said, if anybody asks you if I taught you anything, I taught you how to run. I said, you just saw me walk across the court, my poor posture, up and down, and then all of a sudden you were fast. So you got your speed running away from creatures in the wild.
Yes, that's right.
So what creatures were chasing? How'd you get so fast?
How did I get so fast? I'm not sure. I mean, honestly, I think, I mean, back in Madagascar, we were just running around everywhere. I mean, we had a cartoon once a week on Monday evening, and TV was running 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours a day. So I think it was back in the days where, we had no technology, so we were outside all day playing.
With Madagascar, what are some fond memories before you moved off to France?
Um, I mean, I think it's fond memories, I would say, is just I mean, even with tennis, the camaraderie that we had with a lot of the tennis group. I mean, it was there was not really uh, tennis. There was no very. The federation was very new. There weren't a lot of official tournaments. Wasn't well organized yet. Like, I mean, it's developed since, but there were maybe 3 official tournaments, and then the rest of the tournaments were organized by parents. So they tried to make it as official as possible. The parents would uh, buy the trophies. They would uh, create the draws by pulling name out of a hat, and but there was a big sense of camaraderie among us.
Fourth largest island, fourth poorest country, but tell us about government. 4 different governments.
Yes, there's the unfortunately the political. I mean, it's been quite unstable for years now. I mean, really for years. It was a bit stable for a while, but there's been a lot of instability with governments being overthrown and president coming into power, without really being elected, and so so it's been and lots of corruption in politics as well. So unfortunately, there's been a lot of corruption, a lot of instability, which has led the country to remain in poverty.
But tell us about your husband. He's from there as well.
Yeah, he's there as well. He's from there. He grew up there longer than I have because I moved to France when I was 11, and then he moved to France to study when he was 19, and he did university there. And yes, and we actually met. I met my husband. I mean, I knew my husband from grade 3 when I was in Madagascar, but then reconnected later. He was friends with some of my tennis friends. I went back to Madagascar to play the Francophonie games when I was in university. It's the French-speaking equivalent of the Commonwealth Games.
With your travels, you've been back many times, but you also have a business connection still to Madagascar.
Yes, I have a business importing vanilla beans from Madagascar, and then I sell to Canadian food industry and restaurants in Toronto. I mean, all over Canada.
So let's move on to France. How old were you, and how'd that happen? Because you were under French rule, correct?
So Madagascar used to be a French colony. It became independent in 1960, but there's still a lot of French influence. So my mother's had French citizenship, and so I had French citizenship through my mom. So after my siblings, who were several years older than me, were already at university, and they were studying in France. So when I started to get into tennis, my mom obviously she realized that if I wanted to go further, I had to leave the island. Um, so she decided to move because my siblings were in France already. So we decided to move to France
In Paris.
in Paris. Yes, in the Paris area.
And did you know that you were going to a great place for tennis? Or was that circumstance? You just like,
I
well,
mean, France was the the pre, the easiest option for us, but yes, but we knew there was also a great system for tennis, which motivated our choice to leave
and
the island.
what about the change with academics? What grade were you in? And was that a
So
difficult
that
change?
so that was after grade 6. From academically, it wasn't a difficult change because I went to a French school that followed the French system in Madagascar. So, um, I mean, I think the biggest change was more the culture, the climate, but academically, I was in the same school system in Madagascar.
So Malagasy, is that right? So
Yes.
when you communicate through your business back home, you're trilingual. So what language do you mostly communicate with?
So I am mostly communicating French because most people speak French in Madagascar, and my Malagasy is very rusty because I left when I was
Yeah,
11. And I have a business partner who you met. Her
right.
son was here as well,
Another tennis mom,
a
tennis player.
tennis player as well. We she was part of that group. I said we were trained by a coach that had 2 daughters, and we were a group of 6 girls, and she was in that group when we were 8 years old.
That's magical. That's great. Tell us about tennis in France. I mean, to be a part of a NCAA championship team, yeah, there's a story behind the story. What's the backstory of you getting to be so good?
I mean, I think it was going to France was a great competitive environment. And then that's really what I learned, just to be, very competitive. I mean, I think there were definitely holes in my game from a technical perspective. But I just competed a lot and played. I mean, I played a lot in red clay, so I could just, as a kid, we would just run all day long. And I think the way my game developed is I could outrun a lot of girls.
Well, as a tennis coach, I think we can just look at people and pretty much guess if they can run. You're never supposed to ask a woman how much they weigh, but I think you probably weigh the same amount you weighed when you were 18 years old. With the French system, tell us a little bit about the French system of tournaments. It's supposed to be it's the best.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one thing that was great is a lot of young people, when I moved there when I was 11, say most of the tournaments that I played were adult tournaments. So they had a ranking system. I think the UTR was tried to model the French
Yeah,
ranking system.
we talked a little bit about that. Dave Howell, I believe he's from Virginia, but I've talked to him on the phone way back when because I did a lot of work with Dave Fish. Dave Howell, yeah, he's the mathematician behind the UTR, and it was the yeah, he went to France to study the system, and it's definitely based on the French system.
Right. So it's a bit of like a handicap system. It's almost like the lowest the number, the higher the level is. So, like minus 30 is one of the highest, almost playing at a pro level. And then, so when you enter a tournament, and a tournament would usually be sometimes 2 or 3 week long. And if it's an open, anyone can enter from a beginner to, there's oftentimes prize money. So up to, let's say, a certain level, like I would say, let's say 0, which is it's, I don't know, maybe it would be a equivalent ranking of a 8, 9 UTR. And so the beginner level, those who are non-ranked, will start at the very beginning of the tournament, and the highest rank will start maybe 2 or 3 days before the end of the tournament. So so when you enter a tournament, when you start depends on your ranking. So you always start playing your first match, probably the winner of the lower ranked player. So your first match will be against a lower ranked player. And then next match might be same ranked player. And if you keep winning, you just keep playing with a stronger and stronger and stronger player. But in those tournaments, there's a mix of juniors and club players because they're adult tournaments. So you can really play a variety of players from a competitive high performance junior to a 50-year-old club player. And so I think what was great as a junior is you really learn to play with all types of people. The player who hits hard, the club player who slice and dies, and I think it helps develop that problem solving skill, learn to play different ways, knowing that, you can't just try to hit every ball hard and win that way. And I think it helps develop I would say, a smarter player.
Yeah. I mean, the clay itself is a great teacher, but I think that's really something that's changed in America. It used to be you'd have to play two B tournaments to play an A tournament, and everybody would be in the draw. And again, playing all different styles. I think many times today in junior tennis, especially on the boys' side, it's just somebody trying to bang a forehand.
Yes.
You don't come across a wide variety of players. And then throughout your time, did you play throughout France or mostly in the Paris area?
I mostly play in the Paris area. We would play tournaments in the summer. A lot of times we would go to the south of France to play tournaments. I mean, that was another thing as well. A lot of the tournaments in France in the summer are in the vacation spot areas. So a lot of kids would oftentimes travel as a group, and that's how they'd spend their vacation. They would just go travel as a group and play tournaments, 3, 4, 5 tournaments in a row, travel together, or live in the same house, and it would be a social setting, fun setting, and as well as competitive setting as well. And I think it just helps to keep the game fun.
So, Nomena, during that time, were you representing your club as well?
Yes, I
Team
was
team
playing
tennis,
team
league
tennis.
tennis.
Yes, yeah. But a lot of since I was 11, we play league tennis within the clubs, which I thought is also I think a great strength in the French system because a lot of kids they play club team tennis. A lot of them at U10, U12, so they get a lot of the matches that they play. They get coached, so they get instant feedback, which again helps them play smarter
Yeah,
in the early A's. Yes.
major doses of logic with playing, and then leaving and coming back. Years gone by. I've had players go to France, and they used to have to go to the Roland Garros to be ranked. I understand now that you can use your UTR, but there's no points. There's no WTA, ATP points, but it's still very good tennis. Then tell us about the expenses. So, like when you would come back from University of Texas, it was just all in France, and you could actually make money in the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was playing. The season would end in May, usually end of May in the States. So club matches would usually go up until end of June. So I could catch a few of the club matches that often allowed me to get a free membership at that club and then train with the team. And then I would usually just, play with the players at the club and then play a tournament every weekend, money tournaments, and make some money.
Tell the listeners how the French Tennis Federation subsidizes a tennis club, so membership's not so expensive.
Yes, yes. I mean, they have a grant. France has a Grand Slam, so that gives a lot of money to the to the country. But yes, there's a lot of. It's very much of a club culture, tennis culture. A lot of players are being developed in their local clubs. Are playing in the local clubs. There's a few academies, and some players are going to academies. But I think a lot of players. Especially in my days, I think still to some extent today, are playing in their clubs. And I think, part of it is there are indoor courts in almost every local club. They either bubble it or they have, one structure, couple of courts with indoor courts, but most local clubs will have indoor courts. Um, and and because the French Federation subsidizes the local clubs, then membership with indoor courts are still affordable. For probably $600, you can get an annual membership at a club without paying court fees.
With France, I've been told this, it's easy to remember. I'm not sure exactly how accurate it is, but in the US, we have 5 times as many people, but in France, they have 5 times as many players. The purpose of the UTR when it first came out was to be self-rating, to be genderless and ageless, so then people could play. Wayne Bryan, the father of the twins, when you walk around your block, who can you play? When you get on your bicycle and you go around several neighborhood blocks, or then your mom drives you around the car, your dad, how many people are you playing? I think so many young kids spend so much money on tennis here in the U.S., and they don't have that variety of playing. I've recommended many students to go. I have many students. One of our guests, I think of Jeremy Wertzman, #1 in the NCAAs, Raven Klaassen, who's top 10 in the world, and said you should just go to France, because if somebody's a hardcourt player and they go to France for the summer, there's no, say, on the men's side, women's side as well, ATP, respectively WTA points. And, 18, 19, 20-year-old boys going over, you're going to lose to 15-year-olds. What would comments you would be on that? Think that's true?
I think especially if you're trying to play just bang bang hard, right?
Well, you've never played on clay. You're kind of a
Yes.
fish out of water. You don't have a clay court
Yeah,
background.
no, absolutely. And it's interesting because I remember when we were in France, you kind of knew when you would see some players, oh, he or she's American. She's trying to hit winners off like the first, 2 or 3 shots, just trying to hit everything super hard. And then you would have like the French player who's staying like 3 feet back and just grind it out.
I think
Fly
also 2
through.
years ago, I was always told, Argentina has had so much success in tennis, and former Czechoslovakia, which is now the Czech Republic, and Slovakia, that there'd be many men that would be in France for the summer. They knew they could play, have fun, make contacts, perhaps learn French, but they had no thought of playing pro tennis, because they just knew their level. Maybe they didn't have a good enough serve. So were the tournaments, do you remember, especially when you came back in the summers from University of Texas, was it a lot of international players playing the French circuit?
Yeah, there were lots of South American. Actually, a lot of players are playing the French tournaments to help fund sometimes their pro circuit challenges. They would just play a few tournaments, play in a club, make some money with very low expense in France, and then they would play 2 or 3. They would mix up between some challengers and some local French tournaments. So yeah, a lot of people would do that, but there are lots of foreigners.
Jan Tiriac, first billionaire in sports, Romanian,
Right?
black belt in karate, was an Olympic hockey player, said that he was the best tennis player in the world who wasn't a tennis player. What he said about John McEnroe, philosophy, certainly we think everyone should have a written philosophy, but we always say, don't forget physics. That's part of the equation too, in being a tennis player. But what Dirac said about McEnroe, he should go to France, play amateur tournaments, play right-handed where he can't be a shot maker. Just always remember that comment. But no, I think a lot of kids that play on hard court, they're like a fish out of water. Spencer Johnson, who's been a guest along with his dad on our podcast. I know Spencer. I think he was 10 or 11, long time, and he grew up in Salt Lake on hard court, high altitude, and he's had a very good year. He's a freshman of the year in Pac-12. But we've had some conversations about just get him on clay for the summer, and because a lot of times hardcore players, they have anxiety on clay. They're just playing slap city. They're just trying to tee off and everything.
Mhm.
Chris Clore, they're trying to launch missiles. Rayonich, great Canadian, an immigrant, like so many of the great Canadians. That's another story. But I heard the story that he was in Spain playing. He's very young, so 16, 17, young teenager. And the Spanish coach basically, told him, you're being an idiot. What are you doing banging serves? Just spin your serve and learn to play from the backcourt. And I think if you're going to be a pro, it's like anything, you don't want to avoid playing on clay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before they changed the grass at Wimbledon, now all four surfaces, they play pretty much the same. It's amazing that years ago at Wimbledon, it was like some clay courters would skip Wimbledon, and what we would call, all court serve and volley players, they would skip the French.
Yeah.
So tell us about, did you represent France as a junior? Did you get a chance to travel outside of France, play in Europe? And
So I didn't represent, I actually played in the early years, although I was training in France. I represented Madagascar in several tournaments. So I played for Madagascar at the Francophonie Games, at the African Championship, and we were in a generation where there were a group of us, and we kind of the first few girls who started to have some success outside of Madagascar. One year, I think it was in '92, we played the African Championship, and the three girls from Madagascar. So the girl who was a year younger than me won the U14 African Championship. I won the U16, and then the other girl who was my age, but she was playing up an age group, won the U18. So
wow.
three girls from Madagascar won all three categories.
Tell us about the player you already told me about, Dali.
Dali Randriantefi.
Tell us that last name again.
Randriantefi.
That's good. That's good. Tell us her story.
Yeah, so she's one of the girls of the group of 6 girls that I was training with since we're 8 years old. Her dad was our coach.
Max.
Oh, you did your homework.
Yes.
And he, I feel like Dali and Natasha, I mean, they're in Madagascar. If you say, "Oh, do you know Dali and Natasha?" Of course, I know Dali and Natasha. I think they're the Malagasy Venus and Serena. They decided, you know what, we're going to give it a shot at tennis. People thought they were completely crazy. You're in Madagascar. What do you think? You're coming from a country, they started to homeschool on grade 6, I think, to say, okay, we're just going to train. We're going to train. They got an opportunity to leave Madagascar,
Switzerland.
to Switzerland around the same time when I left for France, and then continue to train. He continued to train the girls in Switzerland, but really the purpose was just to be able to play more tournaments. I mean, the tournaments we were playing were organized by parents, right? So up until then, that's what she was doing. Until 11 years old, she was just playing
user friendly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No more than that. But after 3 years after she moved from Madagascar to Switzerland, she gets to the finals of Les Petits As. Everyone is like, "Who is this?"
Yeah, for our listeners, that's a big time. It's looked at as the most prestigious tournament for 14-year-olds. I know now Wimbledon has a tournament for 14-year-olds, but Les Petits, yeah.
Yeah, yes. And we were just talking about that. I was back in Madagascar a year and a half ago, and reconnecting with her, and I said, "Oh, remember when I played Les Petits As?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, I remember." It was like kind of I felt like the the new kid, and I remember I only had 3 outfits because we couldn't afford buying more than 3 nice outfits for matches. So I had to, I thought I was going to be out of the tournament within like 2 or 3 days, and I got to the finals. So I was like, I had to hand wash my shirt every night for the next day.
Who'd you play in the finals? You remember?
Martina Hingis.
Martina Hingis. Wow, wow, wow. Wait, coming back to user-friendly tennis, I think that's a tennis lesson. I think that's a lesson for sport, lesson for life. Is at an early age, tennis, I think other sports is too structured. The sport I grew up in, ice hockey, is, a lot of great hockey players came from the pond, just skating on the river. I mean, you've spent all these years in Canada now. I did read Craig O'Shaughnessy, the Australian, who now has Brain Game, does tennis analytics and has done a lot for tennis education. But he was coaching Dally, and the quote I read was, he said, never met anybody tougher. That she just...
That's absolutely true. Sometimes I feel like people should make a movie, out of her story, because it's
a great story. Yeah.
Coming from where, she came from and making
44 in the world,
44 in the
three
world.
times in the Olympics.
Yes, absolutely. It's, and she was the toughest competitor. I mean, probably.
I looked at her scores. Of course, when you're playing, now it's called the Billie Jean King Fed Cup. It was just the Fed Cup. I mean, she won like love and won. Granted, it was against smaller countries, but still, I mean, impressive. Not only impressive record, but the way she won, just by the score itself is a story.
Yeah. And she was the player who she never missed. She never missed.
Tennis at the highest level is still a game of mistakes.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, you've been here for the week. This is your third visit with us, and I think I told you this, but it's amazing, especially the teenage boys. The most unmanageable animal of them all. Rally 6 played out, they can do it. Mm-hmm. Rally 8 played out, they can do it. Then you say just play, they can't rally. They just can't rally. And her sister's younger?
Sister's a year younger than her. So Dahlia and I are just a week apart, and Natasha, the younger sister, is a year younger. She's coaching now in France. Junior players, and she was also a great player. Played some pro tennis.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, her ranking wasn't as high, but I mean, listeners, they should know, just to get, for people, like how difficult it is to get one ATP point, one WTA point. I've worked with a lot of kids that have been top 10 in the NCAAs, especially say on the men's side, and they haven't played 10 ATP matches.
Right.
I mean, it's a, I tell juniors all the time, just get better. Just get better. It's I love the line from Jim Rogers, one of our students, college tennis is a goal, pro tennis is a dream. Accomplishing your dreams is a nightmare of work. But now, before we came over here, we're with a group of 4, 11, 12-year-olds, and they're watching Curios being Curios. I got to watch this. It was just great entertainment. I got to find time to sit down and watch this video they're watching. But they have they have a close connection to pro tennis by just pushing a few buttons on their computer. Yes. But you found your way to an American Tennis Academy. How'd that happen? Palmer Tennis Academy in Tampa.
So I went for a tennis camp. I think when I was in my teenage years, we started thinking, okay, playing college tennis in the US could be a good opportunity, and try to get connected there. So my mom took me to a tennis camp at Palmer when I was 14, I think, and I trained there for a couple of weeks, and then decided to join the full-time the academy. I mean, I was able to get a partial scholarship to attend the academy, so that helped financially. So I went played at Palmer Tennis Academy for 2 years, so my junior and senior year of high school, and then that's how I got to college tennis afterwards.
I spent quite a bit of time at Palmer Tennis Academy. I never worked there. Side note, to go off on a tangent, digress. Jeff Lewis, I know a number of our listeners, if they haven't, they should look up Jeff Lewis. Just put Jeff Lewis tennis into YouTube. He's a great clinician, great educator. But he was very good with fitness drills. And at one time, they just said, hey, could you come to our fitness program just to help the juniors? A little bit crazy, Jeff Lewis, especially on a motorcycle, but he could jump over 2 picnic tables. Just go for a running start. Then you have to ask, were they, 2 that were set up vertically, but no, 2 that were horizontally side by side. And when I say that, I know Ivan, who helps us so much with this and that and everything. I know I didn't tell him, but I saw him the other day jump over the net, then jump back. And it's like, well, I got to go tell him not to do that. He could do that, but I don't want anybody else to do that because I know I've been around a couple of shattered elbows with jumping. On our podcast, we have Artyom Pogaimi from Moldova. Both his parents were world-class athletes. So he's physically gifted, and he's like a human pogo stick. It's one of a clip on Tennis Intelligence Applied. I remember seeing Yannick Noah do that. Just boom, boom, 36 inches, just over, back and forth. To digress even further, the carpenters, they have what they call a horse. And it's 32 inches. And Jimmy Connors, that's one of the reasons he was so good with his lower body, is that was really a lot of times his fitness program. Just go jump over that, boom, boom, boom. How you measure an athlete is by how you jump. But Mr. Palmer, father of Jared, who became a world-class tennis player, he was known to be the first person on the academy scene early on that academics was one. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. He was very big in academics. And I think there's actually a lot of a few students at the academy who had, I think back in my days, it wasn't as coveted. A lot of players wanted to go to, big tennis universities, but there were several students who wanted to go to Ivy League schools. I mean, I think now a lot of players want to go to Ivy League schools, but back when I was playing, that wasn't really what a lot of tennis players wanted to do. They wanted to go to a big name tennis university.
Yeah, well, I didn't know you back then, and we probably walked by each other. Just like when we were talking about your NCAA career, I know I was at some of the NCAA tournaments that you played in. How many kids were at the academy, and were they from all over?
Yes, they were from all over the world. It wasn't a very
They were.
large.
They weren't from Madagascar, though.
No, I was the only one from Madagascar. There were some South Africans. It wasn't a very big school. I don't know it probably would have grown afterwards because it was actually. So when I did the tennis camp, it was at Saddlebrook. It was part of Saddlebrook Tennis Academy, and then they split. Palmer. So Mr. and Mrs. Palmer were running the school for Saddlebrook Tennis Academy. And then they split.
Oh, that's right. I remember
and
that.
they created their own tennis academy.
I remember that now. It wasn't that far away.
It wasn't that far away.
Right down the street.
It was about 15-minute drive. Exactly.
Yeah, I should be able to tell you the name of the street. I've been up and down the street many times.
So that's how I think. I think that's also how I got a scholarship because they were just starting the academy and wanted to attract more players and offered some players a scholarship to be able to join because I think most players would have stayed at Saddlebrook otherwise. And then to be able to attract some other players afterwards to join the academy. So he was very much, so that's how where were we going about the academics, right?
Well, the academics with, I knew Mr. Palmer, he was known for that because initially when the academies came on the scene, that was a big question.
Yes. So that was very much of his focus in creating the academy where academics, had to be strong. So he attracted players who wanted to go to Ivy League schools and, play tennis and making sure their academics were strong. And then So yeah, that was definitely a big part of the culture.
And were you there just for the school years and then went back to France, or did you stay year round in the U.S. during those last 2 years in high school?
No, I would go back to France in the summer again to
Best of
play
both. You don't. It's good to be in Florida during the winter months and
month and be back.
go
Yes,
back to Europe.
yes.
And what about the tournament scene during those years at the academy? Did you play U.S. Junior tournaments?
Yeah, I did. I played mostly tournaments, local tournaments in Florida. Then played the Eddie Herr and Orange Ball, and I remember did a couple of did a tournament in Missouri, an invitational tournament in Missouri. But most of them, I mean, I guess being in Florida, there were a lot of tournaments in Florida, so most of them were playing in Florida.
Yeah, I spent 15 years in Tampa. One time it was great that you would go to a tournament and there would be Saddlebrook, and then the split, as you mentioned, there'd be Saddlebrook students and Palmer students. Of course, Bollettieri's was the biggest. And then what happened was at Bollettieri, they started having in-house tournaments. So it was great. You didn't have to be in an academy, but you could play against the kids that were at the
Right.
academy. But they just decided, with the bus, the fuel for the bus, the insurance, the driver, just to have our in-house tournament. So that really, yeah, the landscape of junior tennis is always changing. I guess not just junior tennis, all of tennis. Tell us about the recruiting process.
Yes. So yeah, so I looked at being in the academy. I think I looked at different schools, University of Richmond, Clemson. Took a trip at University of USC, Southern California, and Texas wasn't really on the landscape. I mean, I wasn't. I don't think I was. They only had one scholarship, and originally I wasn't. I don't think I was good enough to be really a contender for that lone scholarship for Texas. And actually, my friend Anne, who was a top 20 junior in the world, top 20 or 30 junior in the world, French player as well, um, was offered that scholarship in the fall. And it was February when I was looking at a couple of different schools, including Richmond, who had made me an offer. Um, and I get a call from Jeff Moore saying, "Okay, well, we've got two other scholarships possibly opening up um, because of two last minute transfers." So, so that's how I ended up being at Texas, where they had the school had two last minute transfers, and I met Vicky Ellis, who was the assistant coach at the Orange Bowl a couple of months prior to that. I talked to her, and
And she saw you play. Tell us the match she saw you play. Their parents, and then the children, coaches as well need to hear this story. Amazing story.
yeah, so I was playing a match where I was down 5-2 in the third set. Played a girl who was my age, and ended up playing at Kansas afterwards. Um, and I just kind of like clawed myself back into the match and ended up winning the match. And I remember chatting with her, and she was like, "Yeah, good." I mean, they had already given the scholarship, so she's like, "Yeah, great match," and just chatting with her for a little bit. And when that scholarship, when the two girls transferred, most of the top players had committed already, and Vicky told Jeff and said, "Okay, I saw this player playing at Orange Ball. I'm gonna check that if she hasn't committed yet, but she can't. She probably won't be able to play 1, 2, 3 in the lineup, but she can win."
That's a great story.
And she can give us a win at number 6. She can be a solid number 6 player. So that's what we need right now. That's what we should go for. And so yeah, so that's how I got the call.
And no, that's a great story with number 6 junior tennis players who aspire to play in college. It's a different animal. I don't really think that junior tennis, I should say, I know junior tennis doesn't really prepare someone for college tennis. You're playing for something bigger than yourself. And I always ask people who've played college tennis, Do you remember how many 3-all matches you played? Of course, the scoring when you played was different. The doubles were each worth 1 point, right? So instead of being 3-all, it would have been 4-all. So
Yes.
were you the last match out at ever when you played for Texas?
So the match for yeah, there were a couple of matches. I mean, there was one match against Duke where it was the clinching match, and at semifinals at NCAA against Stanford as well. That was my freshman year. I mean, I told you the story, but I was rotating, competing for the number 6 spot with a senior. So I was rotating the playing number 6 throughout the season. And then I got a knee injury and was out for 3 weeks.
You did.
I did.
Yeah.
So that we were really rotating throughout during the season to see who's going to play number 6 at NCAA. That was kind of what the reason we were rotating at the number 6 spot. And so the senior ended up playing because I was injured and didn't get to play much towards the end of the season. She ended up starting at number 6 at NCAA, and I was out of the lineup the first match. Fortunately, she didn't play a great match. And so coaches last minute decide to put me on the lineup for the next match, the next round. I win the match, and so I'm staying in the lineup. And semifinal, we play Stanford, and I play a girl a senior, so we knew she was going to be motivated because that's her last few matches. She had a really good record. She's been playing number 6 all 4 years and had one of the highest record winning matches at number 6. And yeah, so I ended up playing her. I'm a freshman, and and I think I was motivated. I'm like, yeah, I'm back on the lineup, and I ended up clinching that match, that semifinal match, winning I think 6-4, 6-4.
Wow, amazing story. Let me tell you this brief story, then I'll ask you when did Jeff Moore tell you? I've certainly spent a little time with Nathan Zeter, but his younger brother, I spent a lot of time with Evan. He was what we call a redo, had to rebuild his game. So he was playing for Craig Tiley, and he was number 7, and they were going to play him. They know the matchups, big game, go forward. And he's big. He's not as big as his father, John, but so they put Nathan Zeter in the lineup. But the genius is that Tiley didn't tell him until the day of. Because if he told him the day before, the point is that he wouldn't have slept. He would have been nervous. So I'm not, because players are all nervous. If you're not in the lineup, you put your head in the pillow and you're going to go sound asleep.
Right.
A lot of times, if people are playing such a big semifinals of a national team championship, they don't sleep. So did Jeff tell you the day of, or did he tell you?
He told me on the day of. I mean, I was on the lineup the match before, the quarterfinals.
But when he substituted you to put you back in, so if you're coming off your knee injury
on the day off.
Yeah, so
on the day off, yes.
Sleep's important.
Yes.
Sleep is important. A flashback so many years ago, I asked people who have been part of college tennis this all the time, how did Jeff, I mean, you might have done it different ways, but overall, how did he form the lineup? Did you play a lot of challenge matches?
We played some challenge matches, and I mean, and I think really, I think he was evaluating us as well while playing the matches.
Yeah, I don't think he can do it just one set way. But many coaches years ago, what they would do, of course, that's when they had more players would be on a team. So that's changed. You would say on a Tuesday and Wednesday have a tournament, put 4 players on one court. They would share the court. And so right away, you're in the semifinals of the 4-player tournament.
Right.
So if you were to win, you move on and play in the finals of the 4 players. So if you win that, then you move up a court. The person who lost, so basically consolation, the first 2 round losers, the first round losers, someone's going to finish 3rd. And the people that finish, the player finishes 4th, they move down. And I've always told people, but with that system, the toughest matches that anyone ever play would be, or where they would say were the challenge matches.
Right.
And, they're teammates and they have to get along. And then what the coaches would do is have one player be studying on the bleachers, and then they would take turns being the arbitrator.
Hmm.
So if there was, because it's pretty difficult, your roommates, you're just doing everything together and you're playing a match.
Right.
But I think for the most part now, and that's just with college coaches, but with high school coaches, I would say that a lot of times coaches don't have ongoing challenge matches.
Right.
And I think when my older brothers used to say that, like, say hockey would be political, the coach gets to pick who's going to play. But in like wrestling,
Hmm.
a winter sport that used to be much more popular, it's really taking some shots because of Title IX, with gender equity, which is fair. But the non-revenue male sports, many of them have been dropped, like say wrestling. And then you have a wrestle off.
Yeah.
Where,
Yes.
in that 155-pound category, you two are going to wrestle off, and whoever wins gets to wrestle in the next match. Did you have a lot of foreign players on that national championship team?
Yes. So 3 of us were foreign. So at the number 2, there was a girl from the Czech Republic. She's actually the head coach of Brown University now, Lucy Ludwigova, but her name is Schmidhauser now, married name. And then my friend Anne, who was the one who got
From France.
from France, and then myself.
With back in those days, redshirting. Did anybody redshirt? They come in and they were a project player and they were on the team.
No, we didn't have anyone redshirting.
How many players were on the team?
So we had 8 players. After we had a couple of walk-ons that joined my sophomore year, I think. Yes.
Well, I've lived in Texas for 10 years and can really remember being in awe of the University of Texas, just because of just growing up in the U.S. and how big Texas, just their athletic department. I think I mentioned it on a podcast where we were talking about football, that I applied to be the football coach at the University of Texas.
Yes.
And I just wanted to get a rejection letter because I was training over 100 coaches at one time in this college academic setting. And we called our program Tennis Tech, but we said we were Resume Tech. But at that time, the University of Texas had an $8 million budget. And my letter, Dodds, DODDS, he was the athletic director. So he would have been there when you were there.
Did you keep the letter?
I do. I have it. So it says, it's laminated, but I just want to get the rejection letter because I told my students, I was telling somebody I've worked with a long time just said the other day, I said, just throw your name in the hat. Just, maybe you're not interested now, but just put your name in the hat. Let them, doesn't hurt to have a conversation. So I basically read, even though I only played Pop Warner football, I still think I can lead the University of Texas to more national championships in football. My organizational skills, my motivational skills. But I finally got a rejection letter. But, with University of Texas used to hold the high school state tournament. And back in the day when I lived in Tyler, Texas throughout the 80s, that was a big deal. The high school state championships were played. What was the name of the stadium? Pennick
Allison.
Pennick Allison. There's so much history with all the photos, be at the University of Texas. And so some people that I've known a long time. Chad Clark, he was our first student. He was from the neighboring town, Longview. Jennifer Roberts started him out. Dave Anderson spent the most time with him. But he was part of what we would say our system. He started late. I remember his mother, Vicky, he was a really good baseball player. And she said, well, just like with your son, and he plays soccer. It's like, well, just be able to rally a ball. It's an adult sport. It's a lifetime sport. Be able to play a little bit of tennis. So that was the motive of Chad's mom. He got so good so fast. So good so fast. Where like Clayton Stanley, who's from Tyler, I started coaching him when he was 6. What year were they compared to you? So when they were freshmen, what were they?
So when I was a freshman, I think that Clayton was a sophomore and Chad was a junior.
I remember talking to the late Dave Schneider. We were so flattered to be at Little Tyler Junior College, and I was speaking at this USBTA convention in Dallas, and he sat in on our presentation. And talk about humility. The coach of the University of Texas asked us if we could help him with a course that he had a course where he was teaching coaches. You have so many electives at a university. And I remember taking one hockey coaching when I was a kid. But with that, Clayton, he redshirted. He was my size. He's a small guy. And, but, he played in the lineup. But Chad, he went straight in. But I have to get it straight. But I know Chad, he was our first player who won the Texas High School State Championship. And the way it works, it's kind of like Roger Bannister of the 4-minute mile. Once it was broken, 1954, I think 6 people broke it in the same year. And it's kind of like, if Chad could do it, I could do it. And then there was, of course, there's the surrounding areas from Tyler, these small towns, Lindale and Van, then the Catholic division. We had a bunch of state titleists, state champions. But Chad, he was only there, I think, 2 years, maybe 3.
Yeah, I think he turned pro after I think he was there 3 years. Turned pro after his junior year.
Yeah, he didn't stay out there long enough. Chad Clark, business person, my recollection is someone from Longview. I would think would pull a number out of this guy. I was thinking 150,000, which is a lot of money back then. And but he stayed in Texas. He stayed in Austin, I should say. Everybody likes Austin. And first of all, one of the reasons that he got so good, and I think that's what listeners can get out of this, so many things. Your story, the story of the coach watching you at the Orange Bowl claw your way back and win a match, is that Chad, and football is so popular in Texas. We practice 7 hours on Saturday. We offered a program 3 hours Monday through Friday, 7 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. So it's total of 25 hours, 100 hours a month. Academics comes first. Show up when you can. But a big thing was the football game, a pep rally, going to the football game. And then what people would do, go to the football game, and then they would have a sleepover. Mm-hmm. And then the sleepover, like the next day, they were wasted. Just all these kids staying up, just little kid fun, sleeping up and watching movies. But our students said, no, you're not going to the pep rally. You can go to the football game, first half. And back then, it was like the parents would listen to the coaches. It was like discipline. It was like a different time. And say, no, go to the first half, go home, go to bed, and we'll see you at such and such time Saturday morning. Along those lines, tell the listeners, when did Jeff Moore have his earliest practice?
Sunday morning. Can't remember if it was 7 or 8, but it was Sunday morning.
That's a coach.
When the gym was closed.
That's a coach who knows what's going on. I know my son played for Ty Tucker at Ohio State, and it's like, okay, no one's going to go out late on Saturday if it practices at 7. I think Ty's more like, let's have it at, let's see, maybe 4:45. That actually comes from Urban Meyer. I think he was the first football coach saying, okay, we'll start meeting at, you say 4:45, it's just got a different ring to it than we'll see at 5 a.m. But there was obviously a connection. You got to know all the female players, got to know all the male players.
Yes.
Sharing the same facility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Camaraderie, cheering for one another.
Yes. And I mean, we also at Texas, it's probably still the case. I don't know, but the student athletes had their own cafeteria.
No, I remember being in that cafeteria.
Yes.
And then did you have your own dorm as well? Did you stay with teammates or other athletes?
Yes. So we had to be on campus our first year. So I think tennis, we were rooming. And we had to get mixed up. So we were not rooming with other tennis players. So my roommate my freshman year was a golfer, and then we called it suite mates because we shared a bathroom. We're swimmers.
Well, when you showed up in those photos, by the time you were there, Kevin Curran, 1985, lost to Becker, but he was a Wimbledon finalist.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
big time tennis.
yeah.
With, but going even back to your childhood, I mean, I would guess that Facebook helps with that. The technology today
Yes,
that you
absolutely.
stay in touch with,
Yes.
even kids from Madagascar
Yes, yes.
that you played with.
Yep.
And how is Madagascar? Have there been other stories? Anything close to Dali
Not
or yourself
as
and your
I mean,
friends?
one thing is there's been, I think, and then I think Dali has really inspired a lot of players, but there's way more players now from Madagascar. And, there's a girl, she's actually the daughter of a tennis friend I grew up with a few years older than me. I think she made top 200 in the world. Her name is Tessa. She grew up playing in France, but her father was coaching her. Um, and yeah, and there's a number of players from Madagascar who are, you know, 15, 16, 17 years old now, uh, top 100 in the ITF or top 200 in the ITF, and we're doing pretty well. And I mean, back in our days, it was just, in the international tennis scene, maybe three of us really, Dali, Natasha, and myself. But now there's probably, you know, a lot more than that. And I think a lot of players are taking up tennis in Madagascar. And I think Dali has really been the inspiration, Dali and Natasha.
No, it's amazing um, with Madagascar. But people have to migrate though. They have to eventually go to where the competition
Yes,
is, right?
yes,
Just like yourself, and
exactly.
Dali and her sister.
Yes. There is a ITF training center in South Africa. So I think there's been a number of players from Madagascar who's moved to South Africa and trained at the ITF training center.
Well, with that, you had a chance to spend some time with the ITF training centers.
I didn't.
You
I
didn't.
was in the French.
What about your game itself? I mean, as far as when you left Madagascar and France, I mean, there's different breakthroughs from a game style or a technical standpoint, or were you that person who could just run all day, compete with that smile on your face,
To be honest,
not miss?
I mean, I think definitely there were some, holes in my games. My serve, my volleys weren't that good. Um, but I could grind matches. I was just running all day long and compete.
But you're pretty much an Yvonne Goolagong. You were a natural runner.
Yes, yes.
From day one,
Yeah.
like your daughter. Tell us about the stadium steps.
Stadium steps, the workouts that got some of us throw up at the end of at the end of the workout. Yeah, we had to run up and down the stairs of the stadium and do the whole stadium.
And with the gym work and fitness, nutrition, it was part of the grind.
That was part of the grind, yes. I mean, and I think that's one of the reasons we had our own cafeteria, right? Is to have the athletes, so all the football players, basketball players, tennis players, baseball, they all ate there. It was I think with the goal of controlling some of that nutrition. But yeah, we were training the fitness after practice. And
The degree, 4 and done. You got it done in 4 years.
I
Getting
got
the
it done
degree.
4 years, yes.
The boys, not so much. Most of the boys take a little longer than 4 years. And what you get your degree in?
Business.
And how tough was that? I mean, the listeners, a lot of people who listen to our podcast. I know it's. I've got a Joe Rogan haircut, but we don't have the numbers that Joe has. But I know we have parents. That's one of the reasons. And I know I had to ask you like 5 times. Make sure you don't swear. Just kidding. Just kidding. I think people can tell she never swears. I'm telling you, her name should have been Yasmina. She's so positive. So, but what about along those lines? With how tough was it academically? I mean, the grind, it's a job. You get to practice every day.
Hmm.
And then, I've told juniors all the time, I said, the really top coaches, if someone messes up, the coach can just, the honeymoon's over. You're recruited and it's okay, new deal. Now you're here, shut up, put up. And I think we could talk about the way it is today. And a lot of your former teammates are coaching college tennis, the portal, mom, they were mean to me. I'm going to tell everybody in the world I don't like it here. Push one button on the computer. But tell us about being a student athlete from the academic side, the workload, the time management struggle.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it was tough. I mean, especially the tougher your degree, the harder it is. But I tell my daughter when sometimes she has a you know, tournament, and it's like, okay, we got to do your homework, fit it in between two matches, and she's like, "Can I just do it tomorrow?" And I was like, "No, you have to get in. You know, cannot have the I'll do it later mentality because you will not survive in college otherwise."
But there's different type of business degrees too, like a marketing business degree.
And finance, yeah. I mean, I
were
had
you,
the easier bit. I was a marketing degree, but I know. I think Clayton Stanley was an accounting degree, which was even tougher.
he's a smart cookie, Clayton Stanley. Um, he, he clept out of math classes. Um, he ended up with, I believe, a master's in accounting. He took I think Clayton, certainly, you have to stop and think, but I'm going to guess that he was taking AP classes. I'm not sure when they came into the mix, where advanced placement, you take an AP class, you take the exam, you pass it, and then you get college credit. I think many kids take too many AP classes. Of course, it always comes down to the individual. But someone says, "Well, I have all AP classes."
Mhm.
That's like one of the coaches we train. He says, "Yeah, I'm working with all these kids. They want to be a senator or an astronaut and a Harvard graduate, all by the time they're 22."
Yeah.
And I think to have a mix where you take maybe an honor English and take maybe AP, whatever, physics. You just take a balance. Um, but yeah, I believe that Clayton. Yeah, universities. Well, I would guess that he might have even done this. Like at Christmas time, if you stay, you could take a course. And
Right.
this is long before I believe the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
Yes.
when you were there, the internet was not part
No.
of the
No.
picture,
It,
right?
it it was internet
Just
was just starting.
yeah.
We were starting to have emails.
But yeah, that accounting class, that make it or break it class.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, we would, remember leaving on Friday after class to travel and play tournaments. Saturday, Sunday, we'd be back at 10 p.m. on Sunday, and then I had a calculus test at eight in the morning on Monday. So you definitely, to survive, you had to be organized.
No, I think Clayton. Again, he went as a red shirt. It wasn't like Dave Schneider was calling me up every day. I mean, when I have a really good player, it's like I'm the coach's best friend now. They're calling me all the time. But he could have gone to a lot of very impressive, like kind of the name schools academically. But he really wanted to go to Texas. This is a fun story. Both his parents went to Texas, and everything's a story of circumstance. I was coaching Laura Hanna, and she went to A&M. She's a Tyler, Texas kid, and the coach left in the middle of the season. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden they had an interim coach from the PE department, and then I was asked to come in and help. And I went maybe for 5 or 6 years in a row. Went to A&M and trained tennis teachers. So I made this do's and don'ts slideshow. So it's pretty easy if you live in Texas to ask people. Back then, you just, well, I'll go buy it. It's like, well, you just ask people. You need to get some Texas. Of course, Clayton had all these Texas clothes that fit
Mhm.
because that was his deal, Texas. I mean, just bleeding burnt orange.
Mhm.
So he had everything that fit. So then it was, and at that time he was very small. It was very easy to borrow clothes that were much bigger. So we had a do's and don'ts slideshow, and I had no idea what was going to happen. So it was a mandatory for these PE students to come and listen to me on Friday night. And it was an auditorium. I mean, if there was 100, there was 300. It was packed, seriously huge. And I started showing this do's and don'ts slideshow. So it was Clayton with like showing the checkpoints. Like today, we're teaching your daughter, like at the contact point or one-handed backhand volley. But then with the Texas clothes, he had like shoes around backwards and sock on one foot, no sock on the other foot, leaning back. And these A&M people went crazy. They were doing this, the A&M hoot and holler where they spin like after their team scores a football, the football team scores a touchdown. And then years later, I took Vic Braden to A&M to help with the same program. Came into Tyler for a few days. And on tangent, the reason I did that is the local coaches weren't supporting Vic coming. Can you imagine Vic Braden's going to Tyler, Texas, and the local coaches are not, behind it. So Vic was such a comedian. But yeah, it was with Clayton, the connections. So our listeners, Nomena's training, or daughter's training, I should say, at the Richmond Hill Country Club. Now, Richard Hernandez invited, I went along with Dave Anderson. I'm going to guess it was 1987. And to go to Richmond Hill, and we made a video for adult players as well, but made lots of videos. So, but Richard was a student of mine in Tyler, Texas. So this ties in with how have we connected and how we're helping your daughter with forehands and backhands. So Richard from Trinidad, but he was schooled in Rome and London, but he ends up in Gladewater, Texas, teaching tennis. It's a really small town, small club. And I drove up on a Sunday to watch Clayton in this town, maybe half an hour outside of Tyler. And Richard was a club pro. And he starts asking me about Clayton Stanley. He's watching him hit the ball. And I said, well, no, I teach tennis teachers. We have this program. You're welcome to come down. And I said, you take a day off? He goes, yeah, I take Mondays off. And I said, well, why don't you come tomorrow? And he came the next day. And, my recollection of that story is pretty soon he resigned and he was just with us full time learning how to teach tennis. And then I had, a long history of, doing all these projects with Richard, working with all these players. So late 80s, 90s and on. So if it wasn't for Richard watching Clayton Stanley hit some tennis balls and, how Richard ended up, where all our students ended up in Canada, that's another story itself, but applying for jobs and this and that. But Clayton actually, he was at Richmond Hill one time. He came to visit in 1996.
Oh, wow.
So I was up there with my two boys because I just took them to skating so they could become athletes. It's like putting somebody on a pair of skis, every impulse you could follow on your nose. And so I didn't really have any plan for them to play hockey initially, but just become athletes. So they played some serious hockey for a while. They both played for, better yet, I'll slow down. My son Mikhail played on a 6-year-old team. You live in Ontario now, so how many years you lived in Ontario?
So it's 18 years now.
So you know that hockey is a religion.
Yes, of course.
It's a religion. You saw me last night watching the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so anyway, Clayton shows up. It was during the World Cup of hockey. It was great. I was living in Canada and the U.S. beat Canada. I love Canada, but I'm always pulling for the U.S. When they play hockey. So, but Clayton, who's a sports junkie, he's got the sports page, and he's like, just remember, he goes, the first 6 pages are all about hockey. Growing up in Tyler, Texas, you're just never around hockey. But, we put something on Facebook a couple weeks ago. Holt Vaughn, who loves the Longhorns, and he wanted to play for Longhorns. His lifelong friend, Trey Phillips, the big tall guy.
Yeah, I know Trey.
So yeah, they were all there when you were there. So, but it was years later where Holt figured out, because we were getting some attention, like what's going on in Tyler, Texas. But for our listeners, what we had was, I can compare it to, say, Welly Van Horn. So Clayton, I met his father. I'm 26 years old, so I've never developed players. When you're 26 years old, you've never developed players. There's a lot of people who think they have, and they're out there handing out their business card. It's like, Mom, Dad, figure it out. The person's 26 years old. They haven't developed any players. They might be able to put their hand on their elbow, but didn't put their finger on their nose. But They're just 26 years old. But I had been trained by Vandermeer, Braden, and Van Horn. So my first day at Tyler Junior College, David Stanley's hitting balls on a ball machine. And he has a horrendous technique, like so many club players. And he's just having some fun whacking away. And I'm there. I say, if you want me to help you out, I'd be more than happy to show you how to hit the backhand a little better. Remember, he just insisted that he pay me. But we became big buddies. And he said, I've got a son. I want him to be a tennis player. And really, he wanted to play at the University of Texas. I'm serious.
He had plans already.
Yeah, he had plans. They weren't as severe as Richard Williams's, but he had plans. But if it wasn't for like Richard Hernandez being at the tournament watching him hit some balls, but with Clayton, I'm 26 years old. People started listening to me because he got better and better. And then there was somebody else who came in the program, and he was the original guinea pig. But if it wasn't for David, I said, well, I'm pretty sure I know what he needs to do. I knew how to teach people how to hit a ball. And I certainly came from 15 years in ice hockey, and I was born into coaching, really, because my father was a volunteer coach forever in that sport. But so anyway, Holt Vaughn, his son now is a top 10 player in the country, and we put up a clip of the father and son going through basics, checkpoints. What people now, what are they doing? That's not the modern game. The grip's important. But yeah, it's an interesting that connection. And then all these years later, story I tell quite often is Colin Lee from England. We worked at the Wellesley Van Horn tennis camp, and he called me up, and years go by. I've been doing this for 50 years, so maybe 20 years go by, and Colin Lee, I'll tell you a couple of Colin Lee stories. So Colin, he comes, and I haven't seen him in maybe 20 years. He wants to see what I'm doing different. He walks up and he goes, "You're doing exactly the same thing." I go, "Yeah." That's body balance, grip, swing, body. That's how it works. Fundamentals are fundamentals.
Yeah, I was telling Ivan yesterday, 2 + 2 was 4. 200 years ago, it's still 4 today, and it'll still be 4 200 years from now.
To digress with Colin Lee, so he grew up at the same club. He's from England, and James and Thomas Blake, their mother's from England. I've got her book, Betty Blake, and this is back when people were wearing headsets like you and I have on right now. I think they were called the Walkman or whatever. So I'm driving the minivan. We have 2 minivans of juniors going to the tennis court, and we're the anti-academy. And I'm asking all these stories about, watching the Blakes grow up. And Colin's a little older than I am, so he has tons of experience in football and tennis. I look in my rearview mirror, and every kid is like got the headset on, not listening. And it's like, wait a minute, guys, you have to listen to this. With what are your recollections with Clayton and Chad? You were watching them way back when.
Yeah, I remember. I remember them being really good players. And Chad, I think he was the superstar of the team, definitely. Very athletic and
yeah, he won. I remember him winning the national title.
Yes.
But like say Trey Phillips, for example. And I remember, I think maybe it was Clayton's wedding. Pretty sure it was Clayton's wedding. But Dave Anderson and I were there, and all these players from Texas were there. And you just look back, and obviously Clayton became a very good tennis player. But like say a Trey Phillips, it was way back when. I wouldn't have any recall for his game, but I remember seeing him play. And certainly it's you just know, okay, I'm here, I'm watching. I don't have a speaking part. Even like with Dave Schneider, we were not connected at a high level. He was talking to us about what to do with this team. It was just what to do with this coaching class.
Right.
He was humble. So, he said, well, I could do some of the stuff with my team. But yeah, how they were taught to play. There's someone I know he's made this comment, Jeff Salzenstein, who I don't know, but um, he used to actually. I don't know if you remember this, but through a connection, when he was very young on the tour, he would say, "There's this guy in Florida. Never met me. Steve Smith's a pretty common name." Mm-hmm. And then also, I think Joey Johnson actually coached him at one time. But Jeff Salzenstein played Wimbledon with Chad Clark.
Oh.
But he wouldn't know that. Well, let me tell you about this guy and that guy and this guy who you're connected to. Because he said, well, what they do, it doesn't look like pro tennis. Well, they're only 8, they're 9, they're 10. We're teaching fundamentals. But if people then hang around and they watch 3 years later, or it doesn't have to be that long, like say with your daughter, there's this thing called the serve, and there's this thing called the return, and the ball's going to come faster, and options. But people just didn't know at the time. They didn't know at the time. I mean, I did some work with the Roddick Tennis Academy, and I never really worked with John, but he was the owner. But I went to train the tennis teachers. Now later, John he's recruited. He recruited my son, recruited a couple other players, recruited a player this year. He was now he's at Auburn. He was at Oklahoma. And I remember seeing him at the U.S. Open. And I said to John, hey, I used to coach against you. I said, hey, thanks for having me go down and work with your pros. It was fun. It was a great opportunity to go to San Antonio. In fact, I'm going there in like 2 weeks. But he said, yeah, what do you mean you coached against me? And I just said, Clayton Stanley and Chad Clark. And he looked at me and he said, victory or death. Because John Roddick was so competitive. He was, and that's it's family. I mean, I think we can now go back to that question, or go to that question. It's like you have an extended family, even going back to Madagascar and then the team. So tell us a little bit how you're still connected with people from both places.
Yes, I mean, it's, I think the tennis family, the players that you work with. I mean, I tell my husband sometimes a little bit like, you trained together, you went through hard things together. It's almost like you're war veterans.
That's great.
There's that connection.
Yeah.
Where going through the hard training, the losses, the wins, the up and downs, and it does feel like you're the band of brothers, like you went through war together, and there is that bond, definitely. And we're still in touch. I mean, with Dali and Natasha, we still talk. When I go to Madagascar, I call her up, we meet up, and Kelly's met. She has met Natasha because we haven't been able to connect in France because she was traveling coaching other players when we were there. But with Dali, we were able to meet. She was able to meet her, and we're still talk up until now. I'm business partner with a tennis friend from when I was 8 years old, and last night it was one of my teammates' birthday, and we had a Zoom talking, meeting up to wish her happy birthday. It's been I would say now we've been doing that. It started during COVID, where we were just home all day and be like, okay, let's do a monthly Zoom just to, reconnect. And, now that we're back to regular life, obviously we're busier, but we've made it a tradition to connect on a Zoom for each other's birthday.
With, there's an expression, so you win an NCAA team title, and when championships are won, the teams say, we will walk together for life. Mm-hmm. I like you said, like we survived war. I mean, so the storytelling with, I've been fortunate to teach tennis in over 30 countries, and been in countries where some kids are hitting balls and some kids are picking balls up. Some the haves and the have-nots. Mm-hmm. Tell us a story about you're back in Madagascar, and I think these are the lessons. It's all about character, life lessons. It's the forehand's pretty easy if you get people to have respect and listen, and okay, the dimensions of the court and physical laws and this and that. But so you're in Madagascar, and I've been in places like that where kids are begging.
Mhm.
They're selling basically junk, but you just buy some things because they need money. And no shoes, and they're tell us the story. I'd love to hear the story again, and I know our listeners, and that's the type of thing with your daughter. Obviously, your daughter, Miran Man, is so high on her program. You're never supposed to talk about talent, but certainly she has some foot speed. So she's fast. She can run. She loves to compete. You know, tennis IQ and all that's not in place yet. She's got a lot to learn. But tell us a story about, because you told it, and then I had your daughter tell it. But now for the listeners.
Right. Yes, we were. Well, our last trip to Madagascar, we went on a beach town and did a field an outing, day trip to the baobab forest, and to travel there. It was such a remote place. We traveled on a chariot pulled by bulls.
Chariot pulled by bulls.
Yes. And so we were sitting, and there were these kids trying to sell her stuff, like junk, like shells and bracelets made of shells, little things like that, or little sculpture statues, and we bought a couple of things just to, we knew that was how they made a living, just to buy things. But once you buy from them, they're like, oh, we got to keep following them, and and so there's these kids who just try to follow us, and then we got on the bull, and now it's going faster, and there's this kid, 7-year-old. He decides to follow us all the way to the baobab forest, and that's probably a 40-minute ride. He's running barefoot. It's 95 degrees on hot sand, and he just ran 40 minutes. And we were, at one point, so we were throwing him water because, it's like the kid has got to hydrate. It's so hot. And it's like, how is he going to get back? And, I was telling Callie, and I said, when you complain that things are tough, you don't know what tough is. This is tough.
Yeah.
And I said, you think, the 12-minute run is hard? Do you think you can outlast this kid? He's younger than her. At the time she was 10, and this kid probably was no more than 7 years old. And he's like, no, I don't think so. And I was thinking, I was talking to my sister. I was like, man, sports federation need to come to these places, and this kid is a future Olympian. If they brought him, bring him shoes and even in track and field.
Supporting that story, when you and your teammates talk back, you're reflecting back, you're having a conversation, and I think this is important. You're not really talking about the win. You're talking about how tough it was to get to the win, right?
Yes.
You're not talking about the match at all. You're just like, Jeff was so tough. We had to do this. We had to do that.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking about, I was telling my teammates, oh yeah, I'm actually in the States right now because Callie's working with a coach here, and it's like, they're asking, so how's that going? And I said, oh, she's stressed. She's stressed because he's making her come to the net all the time, and it's like she's so competitive, she doesn't want to lose, but she has to come to the net. And she knows she's been recorded and video recorded, and you can see the stress level on every point. I was like, I want to win, but I gotta come to the net.
It's almost like the net, there's a moat around it, and it's just filled with a dangerous dragon or alligators or monsters. It's like, they have net phobia with.
Yeah, and one of my teammates was telling me, oh yeah, I remember those days when
Surrey
I was
Pond.
cereal punk Sandy. When I was up 40 Love, I had to. My dad would make me serve in volley every time, but if I didn't do it, I had to run 5 miles at the end of the match. And she was saying, "Yeah, I don't know. The kids don't really have those consequences anymore."
Suripang, I remember older sister, younger sister. Remember just meeting with the dad and making videos for him and say, because at that time he was doing the coaching. That's
Right.
my recollection of that.
Yeah.
With Dave Anderson and I, we've talked about having a podcast on this academy that we were part of for a very short period of time. It wasn't even 2 years to the day, but just circumstance. I read about a woman who was running the Palm Beach Youth Tennis Foundation. I talked to the owner, Arthur Cohen, and next thing I know, we've got her hired. International Youth Tennis Foundation. It was going to be sponsored by Nike. We had a stadium that would seat 3,000 people for the old Greg Louganis Swim Center. And Robbie Sugo was loved by his young teammates, Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi. They just had to go through their agents. They said, yeah, whatever my agent says. And they each were willing to donate 4 days. And that Nike was going to match every dollar that we ran, the fundraising. And it never really came to fruition, but that was the whole idea, is to find people like that 7-year-old running barefoot for 40 minutes. But I think that's where, I've had 3 kids do this. I've told parents, and I tease and say, yeah, I've spent my lifetime saying the right things to the wrong people. I've had 3 students do this. And now you've met Patrick. He has a student who's done this, but it wasn't through me, even though she traveled with Patrick from Montreal to work with us in Florida. But 3 other kids that I said, you would be better off as soon as you turn 16, to take an entire summer and just work at McDonald's. When you're not working, do fitness and work on your skill set. And because, for a kid to have to grab a mop and be making French fries and taking orders and wearing a uniform and having a name tag. But I think people are given too much. The more you have, the less you have. Yeah. But those type of lessons. Let me ask you, you and your husband. I think that's one great thing about Canada is that we talked about that briefly, where like Coco Gauff was taught, or maybe still is taught, by both her grandmothers. And the United States now, especially all these years later, society is very mobile. And young people are not around their grandparents enough. And they're around their grandparents enough. Hey, we haven't seen you in a long time. Let me take you out for ice cream. But if they were to see them on a regular basis, there's places like, say, in England and Ireland, a pub culture where you go to a pub restaurant and there's 3 generations in the same restaurant. Right. And wisdom. I'm always telling juniors, you have no wisdom. You have knowledge, but you don't have knowledge and time. Listen to your parents. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you should talk. But those lessons that you had in user-friendly, parent-run tournaments, I mean, how do you and your husband think, well, how can we take that from your background and try to teach that to your daughter?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things, we went back to Madagascar, and one opportunity that I had was I had her play a practice match with my uncle, who's how old is he now? He must be, I think he's probably 70 now. But I used to play with him, and I have a nephew who used to play competitive tennis, and we're joking. It's like, oh yeah, it's the passive ritual, because everyone who plays against him end up crying on the court because he'll drop shot and lob you and slice and will not give you any rhythm, and you're that junior training with other juniors in a high performance program, learning the strokes, you're banging every ball, and he'll just outrun you, and just he just runs. He's such a tough guy. Like, he would
tough out.
Yes, I mean, he's the guy who would be like, who would say, "Oh, I'm just going to." He's 6 years old. And it's like, I'm just gonna bike to work. to work. He's like, "Oh, how far is work?" "Oh, like 40 miles at 7 in the morning." And he'll have, he works an office job, and then he will work all day, and he'll
He's got bike back.
bike back sometimes at 9 p.m. you know. And for an hour and a half, we'd be like, "Oh, there's too much. I hate traffic. I'm just gonna bike there, like 2 hour bike."
It's amazing.
And he just, I remember Callie watched, she has health class and says, "You need to um, exercise and eat healthy to, you know, to live, to live a long life." And I remember Callie said, we call him Tonton David. Tonton means uncle in French. It's like, Tonton David will live until he'll be 100 because he can just go all day and will not get tired. But anyway, he will outrun you. Sure enough, Callie cried during the match because she was so frustrated.
Well, if he's riding his bike sometimes 80 miles in a day, he's not my version of a mushroom. A mushroom to me is someone with the big Aussie cap, the mushroom cap, and I always think of Rod Laver. He used to put a piece of wet cabbage inside his hat because if so much of the heat is regulated through your head. I think it's like 80%. So they got a band on their elbow, they got a big pot belly, and all they can do is, like you said, they can dink and dice and they can lob. They take the role of the spoiler. I do think that in tennis, there should be a league, 10-year-olds and 60-year-olds. I mean, the youth veteran match, I think that comes back to your childhood, is that in those early years, I think they reflect, and would you have become the tennis player you were if you were in France at age 8 and didn't have those 3 years from age 8 to 11, where it's user-friendly, fun, and family-based. I mean, now it's just tournaments, and at one point with Nadal, what a great character. We're so lucky to have lived when he's lived. But Nadal, at one time, his Babolat, his yellow and black Babolat, kids would have a yellow and black neckband or the headband. The headband, the shoulder, the shoes, everything matches the wristbands. And, the kid, all he can do is just kind of miss the forehand. That's it.
Yeah.
But they show up and they've got all the gear. But those matches here in the U.S., unfortunately, they don't happen anymore. And I think we're in danger now with pickleball, that not happening as much. But yeah, the sport can definitely be too structured. But being an American, a lot of Americans, I don't think they realize that Canada overall has a higher standard of living. I lived in Toronto for 2 years. I've been there many, many times, and I don't think people say, hey, like Bathurst and Yonge, and it's like, I don't really remember seeing any type of bad section in Toronto like I would have had been seen in Houston or LA or Miami, and like, whoa. With the tennis scene in Canada, tell us what your thoughts on that. I mean, I think with coming over here today, we were watching Felix.
Yes.
There's Felix and Bianca and Dennis and big time.
I mean, I think definitely having those players who had great success in the pro, I think has inspired a lot of Canadian players. I mean, I remember talking to Miron, who was saying back in his days, a lot of kids don't even think when he was growing up, no one was really dreaming or thought it was ever possible for them to play, at that level. And I think today there's more and more, players who are dreaming, and one thing that I've noticed, tennis is a sport of first generation Canadians. Callie went to First Nationals in Calgary, U12, and every parent, every kid was speaking a different
language.
A different language to their. I mean, at least in Ontario. I mean, I don't know so much about other countries, but other provinces. But in Ontario, it is, I would say, 80% of the players is a child of an immigrant. 80% in tournaments. Um, very, I would say dominated by Eastern European countries. I mean, in the when we look at the Team Ontario, I mean, it's either the parent comes from Russia, Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, China. Yeah, from all the kids had parents born outside of Canada.
Yeah, I mean, Miami is so cosmopolitan. It's not to be a patriot or be anti immigrant, because we're all immigrants. I don't really understand the African American. You hear that term? It's like forget that. No one's calling me a Euro American.
Yes.
It's just like, come on, it's so backward. It's like, Gideon Area was on our podcast, and he's like, the color of the skin. Can you imagine? It could just be the color of someone's eyes. Oh, they got blue eyes. Oh, they got brown eyes. Oh, so stupid. But with I lived in Canada for 2 years. I mean, I grew up 10 miles from Canada, 12 miles from Canada. Spent a lot of time there growing up, hockey school in the summer, hockey games, all the way through being in college. So we're in Maple, Ontario, and everybody, it's amazing. This is an Italian section. And being there, being in ice hockey, there was a lot of people that were there. It was their first go. There might be the third generation Canadian, but they were just getting into hockey. Mm-hmm. And they didn't. So, wait, you're from Canada, but I just sense you really haven't been around hockey,
right?
But it's because it's the first time. And that's interesting when you think about the different generations and the slow process of learning this, that, and the other thing. So Tony, so many Italian kids are named Anthony, and the abbreviation for that, the short version, is Tony. So I've always said, yeah, Tony, it was, to New York, Tony, to New York. That's the American Tony, the Italian American. And the Canadian Tony went to North York, right? To North York. But the difference, it's amazing, the difference is the Italians that came to New York, years went by and they really weren't even speaking Italian anymore.
Right.
But the Canadian Tony, the heritage, they're speaking Italian.
Yes.
And I mean, so for me, being in Maple, like every garage in October, they're making tomatoes. They're making tomato sauce.
Right.
It's just, in Canada, the public schools, they have public Catholic schools with, but yeah, the Canadian immigrants, I think a lot of people think, well, Tennis Canada is awesome. They're doing such a great, but you hear the commentators, and it's just small talk. I mean, a lot of times they know the game, they played the game, and I respect, we talked about that earlier, is that you sit back and you listen and they're sharing insights. They're not really sharing information.
Right.
Like, okay, tell me about grip, swing, body. Tell me, even analytics, they don't really cover that much. Mm-hmm. In our analytics, I mean, we feel strongly that if you don't know the analytics for the grip or the swing or the dimensions of the court, I mean, that's not even mentioned.
Right.
But with Hungry Dog Hunts Best, I think the immigrant, all you have to do, Agassi, Chang, Sampras, I mean, like Federer's mother. I mean, it's amazing. Just name players, but they see either the mother or the father or both, new country, new language, new way, and then the kids, they sense that, they feel that, and but yeah, the kid who's affluent and doesn't really know, okay, if you fall down, you got to get back up, and
right.
Yeah, tennis, being a really good tennis player, it's not on a shelf. You can't buy it.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's do this from your daughter being here. I've got some notes here. I think it was 150. Now I think it's 170. So I walk around many times with paper like this and a pen, and I'll write something down. let's just do this for a minute. But I want to do this. Miran Mann, who's been a guest on the podcast, I think we should just go back and say we need to have new guests on, but let's bring back an oldie goldie. Is with Miran, no fluff. I mean, it's just the right stuff. I mean, he's a throwback. He's a young guy. He did correct me one time. He said he had listened to a podcast, and I said I think he's 45, or he's not. He's younger than I think he is. But I've known him since he was 10 or 11, and Jan Tirico, I mentioned earlier, never mentioned the word talent. So that's something that your daughter has heard, and she's going to hear it. There's no getting around it. She's fast. She's athletic, and just gifted that way. Like, whoa, this kid can move. Not only just speed, but also endurance. I mean, she can run. With that, talent. How's it work? This football player, Tebow. I'll get it. Maybe I won't get it. Senior moment. Tebow is a football player on the cover of Sports Illustrated 3 times, and he did become a pro. Yvonne's back there. You can tell me. You got it? Yell it out.
Yeah, I got it. I believe the quote goes, hard work beats talent until talent decides to work hard.
Yeah. We'll insert it, Yvonne, from an editing standpoint. But Tebow had this on his refrigerator. So he's covered Sports Illustrated 3 times. Amazing player. Gets to the NFL. He did have a run where I remember him winning a playoff game. So he did play in the NFL. But throughout, people said, well, the blind side, the defensive tackle coming in from the opposite side, that he doesn't have quick enough release. But even then, said, well, he wasn't trained to be a NFL pocket, stays in the pocket quarterback. Where, like, say, Troy Aikman, he transferred from Oklahoma to UCLA because, hey, I want to play the way they play in the pros. But with that, so Miran Mann, so he tells me your daughter, he goes, he really, he believes in your daughter. And I think, and I told your daughter, this is what Miran says. Talent, fast, athletic. There's one positive. Competitive. She really wants to win. She is so competitive. But right now, I'm telling your daughter this, as far as the game itself, she's absolutely clueless. So it's like, hey, Callie, over here, look me in the eye. And with, because most people can't take coaching. And I'm always saying criticism has to be your juice. Just be polite when people compliment you. And, the thing about the circle's small. Another Canadian, Carl Hale, I heard him say that. And I think, okay, I'm going to steal that. It's a small circle. Their lens isn't that big. But when you just know other people are telling them, then you have to hit them. You have to really hit them over the head and going, hey, talent's dime a dozen. It's just.
Absolutely.
But yeah, call it a number, and we'll just talk about that at the end of this podcast.
All right, so let's go with 50.
50 out of 170 from Madagascar. Tell us your last name again.
Which one? Maiden name
Yeah,
or?
let's go with both. Give me the maiden name first, though.
You like the maiden name, don't you? People say it sounds like I'm singing.
Yeah.
The story about that, I always knew that they were going to call my name when they announced players at Texas, when I heard a pause. Rasolo Malala.
The married from marital status is
Raharinosy.
syllables. Sometimes people they don't remember you by last name. People have said this to me over the years. Please help me out. How do you spell your last name? Smith. With 50 is TV tennis. TV tennis to me is a player playing outside themselves. You're playing shots you don't own. Play within yourself. And I do think that we touched upon that briefly, is that, you're watching too much of the pros. You're not a pro. You're a long ways away from the pro level. You just rally the ball.
Yes.
Give me another one.
Let's go with...
So your daughter tries to play TV tennis sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Number 10.
Number 10, you like the even numbers.
Yeah.
We charted a match today. I used to say, yeah, it was a match. We ended up charting a match. We got to do the summary sheet for that. But does she know her differential, plus minus? And winners, forced errors. We should call unforced errors losers. You just hit a loser. That would be so much better than saying you hit an unforced error. But being able to chart, one of our students that we've worked with a longer period of time, he's back here visiting. We tell juniors either do it in front of the TV set with Dennis Channel, go to YouTube. We're down to 10 points a day. If I were to walk through your house, do you have a clipboard? And we teach people off of Bill Jacobson's charting systems, a T chart. So each player has a T. Each player has, with that T, a plus and a minus column. And do they know how to chart, how to get objective data? And so I was grinding. The one boy has been here many times. No, I'm not doing that. No, look me in the eye. They don't lie. Look me in the eye. And so we're leaving, and I said, hey, have you charted 10 points? No. And he starts scrambling around for a piece of paper. Give me another number.
How about 99?
99. Wayne Gretzky. 99. Yellow zone. So I've told your daughter she speaks English and French, and I've told her you don't speak tennis. So we bring people in for our listeners. I used to be able to speak. People come in the classroom and on our whiteboard, draw a tennis court and say, how far is it from here to here, from here to here? And obviously the very young players, perhaps they haven't done enough math, but 180 degrees, 130 degrees, and they don't know, but do they care to know? And then we tell them we can't really at a high level have a tennis conversation with you because they haven't studied the content. They haven't studied the content. Yeah. Give me another one.
Let's go with 77.
77. Paul Coffey. Have a Canadian here, naming Canadian hockey players. Let's see. Love this one, Lynette Federer. Lynette Federer would be the person to talk to, or Robert Federer, mother and father of the great Roger Federer, Sir Roger, is run after every ball. Gloria Connors. Medvedev does it. It's a race to the bounce. The ball's going to be out. You know it's going to be out, but you still run to where it's going to be. And you even if you're not gifted like your daughter with mobility, you will get better and better if you run after every ball. And why do I say Lynette Federer? Because Roger was asked, what rules did your mother, father have? And he said, my mom never let the ball bounce twice. Just run and run. And you know, Brad Gilbert's book, the first book, Winning Ugly, get your racket on it. You got to get the ball back. You've got to make them hit another ball.
That's a great one.
How about something else here? Well, give me another number.
All right, so let's go into the hundreds. How about 150?
150. Looking these up. 3 rules. We have 3 rules. Do just the opposite of what you want to do. We have 2 sitting rooms at this tennis house we have, and it was great that your daughter got a cone and a sock. And I said to you, yes, she's doing that right now. And for our listeners, she doesn't get the racket on edge. Her first move when the ball goes to the backhand side is she turns like she wants to hit a forehand. And then when she does turn, the racket faces hooded, front shoulders dipped. She has a video. She's got to watch the video, send us notes. But she went to the room as an extrovert, and I just told you, yeah, she's look at that. That's great. But she's going to the wrong room. There was no one in the room that we were standing in. I said, she could do it right in this room, but she's going to go where the people are. So number 50, 150, do just the opposite of what you want to do. Number 2 rule for us is one-time rule. I told you, I said, when your daughter says to you, Mom, and they sing it, Mom, I know. Well, if you know, then why don't you do it? But that I tell parents, I said, when that happens, you should have a buzzword. It doesn't have to be a whole sentence. Nowhere. When they're saying that, when I say, what do you mean by nowhere? You're going nowhere fast. You're going in circles. You're going backwards. just nod and listen. So the one-time rule, a lot of times, and kids are really good kids, but the parents and the coaches too now, because kids take too many lessons. We just become noise. Like turn the light off, put your dirty clothes away. And then what happens is parents don't realize this, but they just start doing it for the kid. Instead of yelling and screaming, like, come on, I've told you a million times. The last one is to be different. And I know tomorrow you're going to go to the University of Virginia, the NCAA tournament. Tell us a little about your thoughts on that visit.
Well, that's something we were hoping to do, coming down here. I didn't, I originally thought that wasn't going to happen because it's NCAAs. And then I found out they're hosting the first 2 rounds. So that's great. I think I hope it's just to Cali to see, what she's never seen a college match before. So, to see the atmosphere and, watching the girls play, college match looks like, and
Yeah,
and everything.
along those lines, a college player will, so many things. Go for a visit like you did. So you're 17 years old and you're seeing college campuses.
Right.
Parents listening, much better to do that elementary school.
Yes.
And you get a chance. Skip a tournament and go check out a college match. Skip a tournament and just go to a college facility. And then to teach them the math. So this is, I've been there many, many times already to go to their campus. It's 45 minutes from here. Beautiful indoor, outdoor facility. They're top of the top. The men, I think, have won 6 times in 10 years. They're doing something right. Like, wow. And with the men's team, Jeffrey von Schnellenberg. Jeffrey, or just say von Schnellenberger, so I would say it wrong. So his brother is finishing at Harvard, senior. His brother was sent to me when he was 8 years old. And it was Dave Squire, Aussie, who lives in Germany, said, yeah, they're coming over to find out about tennis and this and that, forehands and backhands. And I remember Dave Squire saying he'll beat everybody in mini tennis, which he did. He's like 8. He was 8. And so this is more than 10 years ago. And he said he'd be able to do 80 double jumps. And he could. 80 double jumps. So he's on this team. He's a NCAA champion. With NC State, Joseph Wayan, I sent him a text, said, hey, no ordinary Joe. Used to call him that. He's an All-American because he can play doubles. Now, here's another story. Wake Forest, we were at the Virginia NC State match, but Ian Dempster, he became an NCAA champion like yourself, a team champion. He, fell out of tennis a little bit, got his degree at NC State, but then Tony Boreski, get the pronouncing the name right, smart guy. He goes, hey, there's this guy, I saw him play when he was a freshman. He was 1 match away with Robbie Mudge to be an All-American. And I tell that story because he was, it's pretty difficult to find somebody who can play doubles. More and more. Every year goes by, it's going to be more and more difficult to find someone who knows how to play doubles, someone who can serve and go to the net. But I think also going there, this is pretty nice. They hand these out for every dual match. And, but to see the campus, to see the facility, and then say, I think a lot of juniors think, well, I'm going to skip college. I'm going straight to the pros. They get into this fantasy, and I just think that it would be a great experience. Walk the campus, see the match, and say, this is what you're working towards.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be, just to inspire her. She actually sees it, right, with her own eyes and sees the campus. And
yeah, then she can get online and read about the players, the women's players. They were up here not to work with us, but they were here as a retreat. And I believe there's 2 Canadians. So then she can, read about their backgrounds,
right,
and the pedigree. It's serious business for someone to say, okay, we want to have you be on our team for maybe a 5-year program, but there's 4 years to play, 4 years of eligibility. But yeah, that's it might be a little bit of a one-sided match because it's round of 64, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. But I do think that Bill Jacobs said it so well. He's one of our pillars. There's little kid tennis and there's big kid tennis, and they're so different.
Yes.
And people spend so many months, weeks, months, years, and there's no long-term plan to what they do.
Right.
Let's give you a few more here. We had your daughter play left-handed today. She's got to work on her left-handed game.
She does.
Playing some mini tennis. We have everybody. Let's see you play lefty. Because if you know it, just because then the brain switched on, you just know they get a little bit bored with the technical work. Let's see you do it left-handed.
I know she couldn't. I could see she with the serve. She even was struggling to figure out.
She could shadow swing it, but she obviously couldn't do that. So couldn't hit a lefty serve. I know Jim Lair is such a positive guy, but no, there's no giggling out here. Compete. And they struggle the most on serves and overheads.
Yeah.
And then also too is that not when someone's playing left-handed, don't let them hit a two-handed. Your daughter's right-handed, so when she's playing lefty and hits a backhand, she's just hitting a forehand.
Yeah.
So no, that's a chance to slice one-hander, hit topspin, but play one-handed. And that's where get in front of the mirror and do it. Get in the driveway, shadow swing, get a friend, toss balls to one another. And it's been proven that you're working on your tennis game with your opposite hand.
Right.
It's going to improve your dominant side.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's do a few more here.
Let's go with how about number 1?
Number 1. Let me ask you, how many times do you think you heard me over the course of this week tell your daughter to breathe?
Oh my gosh. If we add the number of times I've told her, it'd probably be 1,000.
If I had a penny, if I had a nickel for every time. And she's extroverted as well, but then there was one boy she's been practicing with, and he's on the other end of it. Like, no, you sound like the Wild Kingdom. You sound like a different animal every time. Plus, you've already hit the ball, and then you're breathing. The ball's already at the net, and then you're giving us. So, I think it's unfortunate that you have to go with Plan B. But there's some positives with Plan B, like Tim Galloway, bounce hit, say bounce yourself, say hit out loud. Every time you say a word, you're expelling air. That would be right up there for me, the number 1 tennis tip. If you're not breathing, you're choking.
Right.
Let the athlete out. Also, the breathing on the serve. Go back to the fence. I have to remind myself, like Maria Sharapova. I mean, she's been out of the game for a few years now. I'd have to stop and think, has she been out at 5? Has she done her speech at the International Tennis Hall of Fame? But she goes back to the fence. They come up to the line, and then they breathe. And then as they bounce the ball and they start to coil, they breathe a second time. And as they hit, they let the air out. Breathing over and over and over again. But it has to be drilled in. But I think there has to be consequences.
Yeah.
So say, for example, this summer at Richmond Hill, the beautiful facility, they get outdoors on the clay. And it's actually a bonus in some ways, but you just say, hey, you're not breathing. Boom, go to the technical courts. Penalty box, 15 minutes. Tired of telling you, then it's like anytime, go to technical courts. They could be, 4-all on a set. It's like, no, I walk by the courts. I've told you to breathe. You're not breathing. Boom. And it's just consequences. I do think that's where a parent and a private coach really don't have the consequences. Yeah. A team coach is like the coach is in charge of who they're putting out. They got to trust me. They're going to put me in the lineup. They're going to put me out there to play. Well, let's do a few more, then we can end this where you tell us a few thoughts of the week for your daughter here.
Let's go with 17.
17. Okay, so your daughter does not know where this is. It is foreign to her, just from Peter Burwash, a Canadian. I think anytime you learn something, try to make it a story and you'll remember it. Don't pretend it's yours. GVP, good volume position. You close in IVP, and it's unknown territory. She doesn't get past the service line.
Yeah.
We film and chart over and over and over again. And, are you colorblind? Red, yellow, green. Ward law, it's building, forcing, closing, ending, I should say, ending. Ideally, if you're going to miss in the green zone. So for us, it's red, yellow, green. Get to the green zone, miss in a pointing situation. Voluntary, the backcourt. Control, midcourt, hurt. Then you finish. And a Finnish player is not someone from Finland. How about another one?
All right, let's go with 125.
125. I think one thing is, well, here's the information. What are you going to do with it? Move diagonally on volleys.
Yes.
Margaret Court, like so many players, won a major as a mom. Yvonne Goolagong, Kim Kleisters. There's quite a few women on the tour right now that are moms. The Aussies, the way they would say things, the pirate walks the plank. Put the blindfold on, tie their hands, throw some blood in the water, and they walk the plank, and the sharks are coming. It's a great scene for a movie. Like, whoa. But remember Court, what she would say when she came back, she said, I'm walking the plank, I need to move diagonally. Even practicing a little bit, while she was pregnant. But your daughter, she moves laterally.
Yeah.
She doesn't move diagonally. People have to understand this. I plus I plus I equals I. Information, ideas, and insights equal instincts. Joel Trucker, great tennis mind, said it so well in one of these podcasts. If you don't go to the net, if you start going when you're 15 years old, it's going to be like learning a third language. And you move diagonally. So that's where, do they hear it? Do they write it down? Get out in the driveway? And then are they thinking? Now, I told her the other day, she was going through some routines. And I said, yeah, you're just doing your routines because you've done them so much, it's automatic. But is the brain switched on? Are you growing myelin at a faster rate? Give me another one here.
All right, let's go with 30.
And the thing is that what we should be able to do with this is type this up for you. Then you could ask your daughter any of these, and she can't go, da. I did tell her that we're going to go and get some peroxide and dye her hair blonde, and then I'm going to be politically incorrect and tell dumb blonde jokes. I can do that because I'm blonde. So 30, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, so this was a great thing. Okay, we put 5 targets on the court. Diagram a court, 2 percentage posts, 3.5 feet in from the sideline, single sideline, the baseline. So 3.5 feet from both sides, baseline and sideline. So that gives you 20 feet in the middle. And then we put a target right smack in the middle, 5 feet from the baseline. Vic Braden asked Billie Jean King, if you could hit every ball right to that target, 5 feet from the baseline, what would happen? She thought about it for a minute and said, you never lose. So you're on the right side of the court, right side of the net strap. You're going to hit a ball, be on the right side of the net strap. So the ball is going to go between the center mark and the percentage post. And you could drive a truck, but they have to know the targets. But Welby Van Horn would say, a kid will reduce their IQ in half when they pick the racket up. I want to win, I want to win, I want to win. What's the score? What's the score? My UTR, my UTR, my UTR. So I've seen this happen with kids from other countries. They come, we say, hey, we're going to go to a restaurant for lunch, Subway. Maybe we'll go to Subway every day for the 3 weeks that you're here. Every day, get a napkin, draw a picture of the tennis court, a diagram, and put the 5 targets. So I told your daughter to do that. Day 1, day 2, and I think that's where you have to have a memory come back, and you got to be the bad cop. Hey, look me in the eye. And kids, for the most part, kids are not going to lie to you. If you say, look me in the eye, don't look away, yes or no, like a lawyer in the courtroom, just say yes or no, guilty or innocent. Did you? And then she just say, but she came up and told me, I diagrammed a tennis court. I wrote the 5 targets down. And the other 2 are you draw an X in the service box. And X marks the spot. We call it, going back to the pirates, that's where the treasure's buried. And you have to have a target. If you don't have a target, anxiety levels. Now, most young kids, because they're going to get passed because they don't have the wingspan, they're going to get lobbed because, again, they're short. So they avoid the net. And That's when they have to be really intelligent, really patient, come in on the right ball. But Braden used to say their anxiety level just goes way up. And of course, now I think the anxiety levels go even higher because they're just thinking about my rating. Let's go with another one.
All right, let's go with 41.
41. I know people have to really like tennis to be listening to me, but not to listen to you. On both her serve and her overhead, she shifts her head. She lifts her head on her ground stroke. She's ahead of herself. The brain's ahead of the hand. Plus when I said, okay, we did some technical work, some filming in the classroom. And I said, okay, you two go play a set. She was looking at it. She was like, because I'm sure that she was thinking, I'm going to do the same exact thing I did here the first time I came. So she's all excited to play, but she shifts her head. And it's not a once in a while thing. It's every time. So what do you do with your eyes? Eyes to the bounce. Then you pause, eyes to the target, confirm, reconfirm. You have this look of strength, poise, and then your eyes go to the contact point. And some kids could say, look at Sonia Kennan. She just looks down, she's looking at the ground, she tosses. You can do anything you want. The brain can do it any way. There's not a right or wrong, but here's some advice. You're either going to take it or you're going to leave it. But the thing about shifting the head, what happens is the eyes go, because the brain's ahead of the hand. So when the eyes go, the head goes. Inch for inch is the head's the heaviest part of the body. And then the whole body goes. Now, I'm not a biomechanist. I tell people I'm not a scientist. I'm not an artist. A craftsman. I know my craft. And what happens Big Braden, when you shift your head, you disturb the flight pattern of the racket head. And the electrical signature changes. And then you're gonna find out, okay, I'll get the serve in. But then, in a getting aerial, they do the calculations and numbers and go, yeah, this is going to be your max based on your size, the lever. This would be your max on the serve. But because you shift your head, the golfers, when he did that with Braden years ago, they were all into it. This is why you can only hit the ball so many yards.
Yes.
Let's do 3 more here.
All right. Let's go with 85.
85. Now, again, teaching is information transfer. Some people say, oh, this is too much information. It's a language. Yvonne's working. I said, Yvonne, why don't you write a book? He told me 2,000 would be a better number. Just 2,000 questions with answers. How long is the tennis court? How wide is the tennis court? You just boom, 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 boom. I'm sorry, what did you tell me again?
85.
85. Hanratty, Seymour and Hanratty, Notre Dame. Seymour was 85. I mean, so I can remember that from so long ago. It was important to me. People have to fall in love with tennis. That's so important. You got to love the work. It's like I love the opportunity. Oh yeah, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go see the University of Virginia, and I've got 2,555 days, and it's the attitude of the household, is a lifestyle. I'm after it. This is what I'm going to do, and all that energy. It's going to help you in every walk of life. So this is a great one. 16-second cure. Jim Lair, now a tennis dad who I've never met in person, done video work for his daughter. He sends me, this is a Storytelling for Mental Toughness is one of Jim Lair's books. So he sends me this video, or sends me a podcast. It's Jim Lair. I go, 25 minutes. Okay, I'll you're doing laundry, you're doing this and doing some dishes or whatever. I got 25 minutes. And we all listened to one part where he said, marshmallows and pillows.
Yeah.
If you're used to marshmallows and pillows, and if you want your marshmallows to be sweeter and your pillows to be softer, and just to play that for the kids. So Lair has this 16-second cure. How he really made his mark initially was studying what players do in between points. It's not a fun stat to tell people how exciting tennis is. If you love baseball, it takes people a long time to throw the baseball. It takes about the same time for someone to serve. But what do you do in between points? So your daughter, we've been teaching her serve rituals, return rituals. She has them out of order. But no, she just rushes. She talks fast like so many young kids. She talks loud. No. And I'll tell people, no, you got to change the way you talk. You need to talk slower. excuse me, the goalie last night, American kid, who, he had a shutout going to the last second, but his team won 2-1. Everybody says the same thing about him. He's so chilled. He's such a cool cat. I told your daughter, I said, you need to, in your bedroom, put up John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. I told her, I said, you need to know the word poise. But that's where, do you have a pencil and paper? I told you to do that. Did you do that? And two more. What do you got?
All right, let's go with one. It stops at 150, right?
We did 150.
No, but it stops at 150.
No.
Wait, there's more.
Well, what happened was we had 150, and then she played again, and I wrote down 12 more things.
Right. So
So
let's
172.
go. Okay, so let's go with 170.
Volley right at them. Singles, doubles, confrontations. We said, okay, red zone to red zone. So your daughter, Callie's in the red zone, her opponent's in the red zone. I mean, let's dummy this down. That's what they do. Make it simple. They, the coaches, any sport. So red to red, yellow to red, green to red. So now Callie's back. Her opponent is red to red, yellow to red, green to red. Very seldom in singles. We have two players, yellow to yellow or green to green. But the times that she's played points, it's green to green. She feels like maybe she's just being too nice. There's times where you can go right at the person. And plus, just like more so in doubles, because you're just always trying to go in, is you get the ball down at their feet and then you force them to hit up. So the savvy, she's 11 years old. So right now, my father used to tell me, you don't have any savvy. You don't sense. You have the brains that God gave little green apples. Just to figure it out. All right. Okay. Another one.
All right, let's go with 160.
160. The Jim Verdict 10-minute warm-up drill. She said, which was great, at Richmond Hill, they do the Bryan brother 500 balls, run out in the court, see, it's just service line to service line. How many balls can you hit the first 5 minutes? In juniors, they don't get to 500, but action, get out there. But the Jim Verdict drill, it's on our course, Tennis Intelligence Applied. It's a fantastic drill. And it's great for people who are slowing down, making changes, people coming back from an injury, but it's still, he did it at one point. He said his son, we interviewed his son, Doug. People should listen to that podcast. We dedicated at least 2 podcasts, I'm sure, to Jim Verdict. 15 national championships, no scholarship athletes. But you just would do 1 minute cross court. And then one player, one player's hitting volleys, 1 minute. Ready position, unit turn, and you're organizing your feet, organizing your hands. And we're just every time going, every ball is a match ball. They're playing tricks on their own brain. If they practice, they go, oh, this is casual. They want to get to the point where they look casual when they're playing a match. They're just chilled. Alcaraz is having some fun out there. I think back about someone like a VJ Armitage. So 1 minute volley to forehand ground stroke, and then you come up, reverse it. So that's 2 minutes. Then you do it backhand to backhand. That's 4 minutes. And then you do alternating. One person's hitting a volley down the line. This is service box to service box. So one person's up at the net. And, say they want to practice, be able to practice without a coach. They don't have to always have an adult present. So they could do it. So let's just do 20. 24 hand volleys, boom. So one is finding the ball, touching the ball. One's finding the ball, brushing the ball. And they're organized. And one of my favorite drills is 50% tennis. 100% with your feet, 50%. You can't hit a winner, especially now with the new rackets. They're not new anymore. Been around for a long time, since the wooden days. One more bonus. Last bonus one. What do you got?
All right, let's go with 101.
101, the Dalmatians. Whoever put that together, Cruella DeVille. Great name. Jeff Lewis, shout out to Jeff Lewis again. Go to YouTube and type in forehand spoof, and it'll be Jeff Lewis. Be one of the best videos that you've ever seen. He came up with the name Noah Atala. The coach's name's Noah Atala. 101 is short ball range. Vic Braden used to say, if a kid knows their short ball range, they know tennis. Or if a coach, better yet, if a coach knows the short ball range. And we have some questions when people come back, 3 questions easily. Okay, but short ball range is going to be one of them. And I'll just ask 3 tougher questions. Then I know, like a football quarterback, they're studying content, and kids are not doing it. They're just not doing it. Like say at your club, Richmond Hill, beautiful place. I look at the kids, they come here to visit. You're leaving court 19 and 20. You're turning left, and you're going to go charge a muffin to your parents' account. You're going right, and you're walking by these empty squash courts. And, like, okay, I can be social, but I can make this happen. Hey, let's go do this. Get a partner, do extra. So brain cramp, help me again. What number we're on? Or what did I say? Bonus?
Short ball range.
Short ball range. Thank you. Senior moment. So people, it's 7 steps. No. It's tennis intelligence applied. It's explained on the court, and it's explained in the classroom, each concept. And we've had, since the 80s, we've had 70. The emotional anchors. Now we can certainly add a few more, the Lendl grid, the 2-bounce rule, aggressive air margin. But it's not a system, it's a concept. Here's the concept. People, it's an organized plan, you're teaching everybody to say, no, this is just a concept. The number of steps it takes you to get in volleying position, well, that's GVP. Well, green zone. Got to put it all together. Do you make the connections? Do you have a tennis IQ? Does this make any sense? Welby Van Horn, 95% of people just play at tennis. And I think what's really sad is 95% of people, if they're guessing, they don't have information. They're teaching at tennis. They're not really teaching. And then you'll be able to see Vic Braden, with take the ice cream cone and you put it in the middle of your forehead. If that kid can play, you're a pretty good tennis teacher. So I know it's with my son, Connor. When we made Tennis Intelligence Applied, Miran Mann, the pro at your club, the director, he was an intern right after college. Then, so it's not quite 20 years ago, but close. So my son is in GVP. We have a yellow rope. Doesn't have to be yellow. We have a rope. And then I start walking where I'm going to hit a cross-court approach shot. And we have a quiz we give it, and people that you don't want to stay away from the word wise. You're going to go always down the line on approach shot. But if you approach cross-court, the ball's coming in on a diagonal. Braden used to say the ball's coming in crooked. It's very difficult to hit it straight. But if it's coming in straight, it's very easy to hit it crooked. If you watch the pros, it's amazing how many times they approach cross-court. I think one of the reasons that coaches, they always will have groups and they'll have lines going and they go down the line and they peel off this way. And so then we have kids drop hit underspin backhands. We did this with your daughter. We did it where it was controlled, a situational drill. Her partner, who was initially her partner, turns into her opponent. So it's predictable than unpredictable, or a better way to say it, it's non-competitive than competitive. Now, you saw it. I mean, it looked like, ooh, this is big time tennis, Martina Navratilova. We drop hit, we work through the checkpoints on underspin backhand. But then we want them to know you take speed off the shot. When the ball's in flight, you're in movement to the net. It's a trajectory that keeps the ball low. And then you're only giving them half the pace. But so we have them play a set. Okay, so your opponent's going to serve to your underspin backhand. You play cross court, play a set. That's just how you start the point. And you're going to get that ball on the inside of the percentage post, and that's how it's done. It's not a matter of like, okay, we've worked with you in the morning, go play sets. That's a lot of times that's instruction, destruction. But to me, that's where you want to be a student of the game. The quarterback, studying the game plan, and then the rationale. And that's why if people are going to use the GreatBase information, which is a system of systems, homework, you're not looking for little kids to have success. Yeah. You don't want them to not have success, but to us, your daughter's not even 12 yet, but the best player at a 1200 tournament is the player who gets the most attempts at an overhead. That means they dictated the point, they were on offense. But you can go to a weekend tournament, 12s for sure, and not even see an overhead. Well, let's have you just summarize your time here, and what are your thoughts on tennis?
No, I mean, I think it was definitely great. I mean, I mentioned to you that I think she learned more in 5, 6 days here than, about tennis, about how to play than probably in 2 or 3 months, because it was so concentrated. And I think one of the best thing was to really, have her play some sets and have that instant feedback. And, I mean, I'm sure it was tough on her just being constantly criticized for a whole match, but it was great. Like, she's learned so much, and just seeing the progress in just a few short days. And I think she's leaving here a little bit less clueless about tennis. uh, but still, have lots of work to do. But yeah, I think it was just great just to have that pounded in her in such an
PPP,
intensive
parental
way.
permission for pounding.
Yes.
Well, the one thing with listeners, we have what we call immersion day. And I understand logistics. It'd be nice if people could take 12 5-minute lessons, but it's really logistics. It's common sense. The cash register, this is what regulates a private lesson. I'm not so big on private lessons. It's 7,200 square feet. You can't argue with one-on-one. But, I know a lot of businesses, well, you can't learn in the group setting, but that's why you have to take privates. And I think many times that's the business of tennis. But for me, my story on immersion, I was working for Vic Braden Tennis College Europe as a consultant. I was training the coaches, head coaches, staff coaches. Helmut Meyer said, all right, Steve, I got a great idea. Paid me to do it in my 20s. I had the summers off from running a college program. So if we're in Berlin, 10 days, 10 hours a day, I do a Berlitz course, German. And then he just wanted me to experience what my students were experiencing. And it was really interesting at that time. The Germans, and Vic had a place in Spain and a place in Switzerland. The students were learning tennis, but the teachers were learning the language. So, coming back to fundamentals, the students that really learned the language could hang around and then be in business. The coaches who had liquid courage by staying out at night drinking German beer could just go schnell, and they just, but it's the same thing. It's the same formula. If you're going to learn German, got to have a great base. You got to start the right way. So anyway, I come out of this immersion course, and one of the coaches, was one of my coaches that I trained. He became the head coach. He said, well, I think I'll go to Amsterdam. I got things organized. I think I'll go to Copenhagen. He's making all these 1-day trips, 2-day trips. So they fire the coach. So I did 10 days, 10 hours a day, one-on-one. And I was just going to stay with a German family that had children who played serious competitive tennis. But then I had to, as they hate, plan B. And I went to the island of Zilt, and I had to be in charge of a group of English-speaking coaches for the remainder of the time I was scheduled to be in Germany. But the word immersion, we tell kids you're either a 1 or 2. You got to be all in. And I think I know you have to record it. Have a practice log, have a checklist, put it on the refrigerator. You can't do all the routines, but you can, it's amazing. We've coached kids for years, and I go, have your parents put up mirrors yet? No. And, do you have a practice log? No. We tell kids, and I'm sure this has been on these podcasts before, but people that are really into it need to hear it again, kids especially. And that's where the coaches have to be after them. If someone comes to visit us, you could do this with your daughter, get your husband on the phone and say, okay, I can ask 50 questions. Now, I wouldn't expect your daughter to be able to have like spot on answers for 170 points, but it's all one. It all becomes one. But I'll ask routines. Are you doing 10-minute yoga? 10 minutes of yoga? How often are you doing it? And are you writing it down? Yeah, that's 3 questions. Are you doing the skip rope routine? 12 minutes minimum. You want to build up. So it's on a weekend sometime where you don't have a tournament. You want to build up. You can't just do it because then all of a sudden you're going to injure yourself. But get to the point, like a boxer, you can do 15 rounds. You can take 1 hour, 3 minutes on, 1 minute off. And it's not to take the confidence away from them, the zest, the fun. But if they just go, no, 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 no. But I love the Braden line. Eventually the umpire is going to say, ready, play. You know, and Vic, can you hit it? Can you hit the target? That was his definition for tennis. But no, your story is amazing. Madagascar. I mean, congratulations
Madagascar to Virginia.
To Virginia. And now all the connections, Clayton Stanley.
Yes.
Thank you, Clayton Stanley. I think Richard Hernandez watching Clayton Stanley hit a tennis ball. But Richard, he grew up in tennis and he could see it.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, this kid has strokes. And it's really interesting for us. It happens all the time that people that we've taught, so it's not that I've taught, but we have students who teach and we don't really like, are you GreatBase? But I don't really take that as a compliment. I tell people that it's unfortunate. Like Arthur Ashe said that about Welby Van Horn. You could tell one of his students from a mile away. And that happens all the time. People see somebody hitting, 5 courts away and they can just tell. Efficient strokes are aesthetically appealing. I tell the students that we teach, I said, really, most people are not really working on technique, tennis math, not to a level of precision. But then we flip that around and go, there's a lot of people that we have to respect that are not teaching technique because they're getting kids with short, compact swings because they're feeding balls at 100 miles an hour. And they're saying, move your feet, take the ball early. But that's more of a trial and error approach. And then teaching people, these are off-court routines. And all the information, you'll get out what you put in. Tennis players, they don't get what they expect, but they get what they deserve.
Right.
And as we're signing off with this podcast, we had 2 players and a coach come in late last night. So we started late. So for us, we met at 9 a.m. That's starting late.
Yes.
So then we went from 9:30 to 2, lost track of time on the court, time in the classroom, tennis immersion. So then we go to have lunch and, the homeschool kids, okay, tell us what you have to get done. But then we come back and because we came back here at 4:30, said, okay, we're having a pizza party. And I said to the kids, okay, how long should we stay? When should we leave? And it's like, what do you have to do? I mean, we have 3 lighted indoor tennis courts, classroom, a balcony looking over. You're here. What are we going to do? Oh, we're done? And then the thing is that they've got to do their schoolwork. But you can always, put in that extra effort. How's it go? Work hard and then some. I tell people there's no program that I've ever seen that develops players. It's program plus. And then what do you do on your own? And that podcast, another podcast I was sent, it sent so many things. In sport, your work is never done.
All right.
So I heard that today. That's not part of my lingo, but I told that and I'll make that a story. In sport, your work is never done. I think your daughter, in many ways, it's like she's done 80% of the work. She's pretty close. She's only doing some Band-Aid work technically. It's not major surgery. So a lot of work has been done in just like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
But the 20% that's going to last, you're always going to be working on that.
Yeah.
Can you do this for the Longhorns?
Hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em horns. Austin, Texas. Thank you so much for being a guest. Fantastic.
Thank you for
What
having me.
amazing tennis story. And I hope, as we say, Nomena, that with our audience, the tennis treasure chest, that there were some golden nuggets. I love this, so many stories, but the 7-year-old, just everybody get a picture of that. I always tell kids, like the life that you were born into, you see people and what are they doing and gratitude, having that opportunity to be in tennis. That came up today. And the one kid could answer it. You don't lose an opportunity. Someone else takes it. And, the young people that are part of that NCAA tournament, you'll definitely see tomorrow. They didn't just go to the shelf and go, okay, I want to be playing college tennis. They put work into it.
Yeah.
But thanks so much. Adios, amigos.
Thank you.
Nomena.